Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description. Koby's Choice by Sword of the Gods, Axe Hand. Morgan single-handedly shattered Koby's faith in the Marines, breaking his dreams. If a pirate is the first one to ever show you kindness in a world run by a corrupt justice, who do you follow? Well, the future king of the pirates, of course. I don't own anything. Adios.
Daddy, for the second time that day, Ace ran into his father's arms in the Goncourt Plaza, though this time with the orange hat that had been gifted to him bouncing over his black hair. Luffy immediately abandoned the mermaid he was trying to wake, leaving her to fall back onto the packed earth as he knelt, bracing for the coming child. Luffy scooped up the boy in a single motion, spinning them in a circle before hugging him close. "Did you have fun, Ace?" he asked. "You weren't scared at all, I bet." "Nope." The child nodded. "I know that you or Mommy'd get me, so I wasn't scared. Nay, Daddy, guess what? That big guy with the hammer thinks you and Mommy are the bad guys. He's stupid. Gee.
Shishishi. Tell me about the fight. So the hammer guy was breaking all these things, Ace began, recounting the battle as best he could with onomatopoeia and arm gestures. As he did so, Nami stepped up beside them, linking her arm through Luffy's as they listened to their son babble. "Why did they get out of work?" Usopp grumbled, trying to shake a whale shark fish woman awake. She snorted and rolled over.
"Because we're almost done," Mary answered from beside the sniper, lifting the whale shark's husband, a bulky merman, over her head in one fluid motion. "And I think they deserve some family time after being apart for 2 years. Still, now, long nose," Robin intervened, a trail of arms rolling an eel mermaid toward the evacuation point. "Do you recall how you felt when Mary was taken from us and your subsequent emotions when we retrieved her once more years ago? I do believe you yelled at me because I prioritized our continued survival." "Good times," Mary sighed. Vice Admiral Jonathan was the first guy the first ever actually talked to. "What?" Usopp demanded, rounding on the ferry he called his niece. "I bet I talked to you all the time and you never said anything." "I wasn't worried that knowledge of my sentience would stop Jonathan's adventure," the Klabouterman explained. "And I thought it would help keep him from burning me or looking too hard for Jin. Our little bet was fun and it kept Jonathan from coming for us himself." "A fortuitous circumstance," Robin agreed. "He was clever enough to doubt my disguise from the onset. What did you mention to him to dissuade his overt involvement?" "I'm not sure what did the trick," Mary admitted. "He already knew the legends, so I didn't have to explain what I was. He asked what sorts of people you all were and what sorts of adventures we'd had. I may have mentioned saving Alabasta and Toppling Drum, but I didn't use the names. He probably knew anyway. Oh, and he asked why we'd invaded G-8. But we didn't," Chopper blinked. "That's exactly what I said." The Klabouterman nodded. "That might have been the thing. Really, though, we're lucky Jin didn't kill anyone when he ate his fruit. That would have been a crossed line and Jonathan would have come down on us like a ton of bricks." "Can't they just get here already?" Amy demanded, throwing her hands into the air. "Honestly, we're standing out in the open for them." "The waiting is the worst part," Coby agreed with a shiver. "On edge. The possibility of your opponents appearing at any moment, knowing that they could pop out without any warning. The knot in your gut that grows and grows until the tension causes it to snap." "You need to relax, Coby," Grace said, stepping up behind the Rosset. Her hands settled on his shoulders, his body visibly loosening. His eyes rolled as he sunk to his knees with the thief following him. Grace's fingers tensed and relaxed with each movement, Coby's body moving along like putty. "New powers, published author, a thievery legacy, and you're also a masseuse now?" Usopp gaped. "Way to make the rest of us feel inadequate." "Speak for yourself," Coby sighed, his breath hitching as Grace hit a knot in his back. "Oh, right there." "Really, Grace," Amy agreed. "What happened to the lazy little girl that used to hold onto the hem of my dress?" "I had to grow up. I realized that, unlike Mr. 3, the people of this crew were relying on me and I had to rise to the challenge." Grace paused, pushing Coby onto his stomach so she could apply more force. His arms flopped, but the young man made no qualms about his new position. "Besides, I finally found something I want." "Could you two tone down the PDA?" Zoro questioned. "It's making me nauseous." "You would not be suggesting that if Sanji were awake," Robin pointed out, gesturing to where Chopper was sitting beside the unconscious chef. "In that situation, you would encourage the affection because Sanji would have a paroxysm. Therefore, I recommend we allow it to avoid any double standard. It seems to be doing Coby quite a bit of good." The boy in question made a long rumble of approval, something between a cat's purr and a happy growl that came from the back of his throat. "Why, exactly, is Sanji unconscious anyway?" Usopp asked. "He was helping us until a few minutes ago." "He passed out when Coby, Nami, and Ace arrived," Mary answered. Oh, and really, oh, was all there was to be said on the matter. Between his avoidance and denial up to this point, it was a wonder of psychology that he hadn't passed out during their group call. Now that he had a face to put to the name, Sanji could avoid the facts no longer. By the way, Coby breathed through relieved sighs. Remind me to show Luffy and Nami the pictures I took during our fight. Ace looks adorable. I bet, his masseuse grinned, her eyes lowering to a half-lidded state, you know.
Don't be getting any ideas, Zoro grunted, side-eyeing the younger couple. Grace stiffened but Coby remained a solid pile of relaxed goo. One brat is enough trouble for our trip. We don't need any more in the works.
Oh, you don't need to worry about that, Grace told him, her face carefully blank. I have complete control of my body's systems thanks to my fruit. That can't happen unless I want it to. Do you want it? Robin queried, a mischievous grin on her lips. The artist shoved the heat in her cheeks down as best she could without the others knowing, but the archaeologist and the wood fairy still smirked at her. Can we change the subject? Amy demanded. I'd rather not talk about this when it applies to my little sister. I'm not little anymore, Grace pointed out, but that didn't stop the blonde from stomping over and pulling her away. Droplets of chemicals hung suspended in the air as her hands were pulled away, only for them to fall a moment later. Coby gave a disappointed sigh, stretching his arms with a newfound looseness. Thanks, Grace. That felt amazing. So, Usopp muttered. Where are Frankie and Jin? Shouldn't they be here by now? They're up there, Mary supplied, pointing to a little speck in the distance. They and Sunny are waiting for Hody and his band to attack so they can have their super epic entrance. Damn, that's a good idea, Zoro and Usopp whispered, though the sniper did not use the expletive. Oh, hey, Coby blinked. Hody's on the island again, and he's pissed. I thought Namur went to take care of him, Usopp gasped. He did, Grace nodded. Which means he failed, Amy said. That means our fight is going to be harder than it needed to be, but I doubt we can change that now. He should have at least worn Hody down. I wouldn't count on that, Coby denied, his head tilting. He doesn't feel weak. Actually, I'd hazard to guess he feels even stronger than before, like Luffy after downing an all-you-can-eat meat buffet. Crap, Usopp whined. Nearby, Sanji groaned, finally coming back to the land of the living. Chopper, the chef blinked, the furry doctor filling his vision. What happened? I just had the worst dream.
That was no dream, Sanji, Robin said, stepping over and kneeling beside to the downed blonde. You did, in fact, witness the adorable toddler that is the child of Luffy and Nami.
Ah, Sanji nodded, resting his head on the ground and closing his eyes. His hands moved of their own accord to light there a moment, releasing a massive cloud of smoke from his lungs. I see. You're taking this surprisingly well, Chopper commented, his skepticism plain to hear. You cycled through the stages of grief far too quickly. If Nami Swan is H-happy, then I'm H-happy for her. Even as he spoke, tears began rolling down Sanji's cheeks. The waterworks and the smoking contrasted each other, opposing representations of his mental state. Still worried about said state, Chopper helped Sanji sit up using all the bedside manners Dr. Kureha lacked. I really am. Mommy, Daddy, Uncle Sanji's awake. The crew watched as Ace slid to a stop before the chef, his red hat flopping over his eyes from the momentum. His little hands came up, pushing the brim of the hat away so Sanji could see his chocolate eyes, button nose, and monkey D smile. Hi, Uncle Sanji, I'm Ace. Sanji's eyes twitched, though this was a nonverbal that Ace totally missed. Mentally, Sanji's mind had gone from 0 to 100 instantly, dividing Ace's face into what was clearly Nami and what was clearly Luffy, the boy's words not registering. Duty to the navigator, anger at his captain, and the knowledge that the child had no idea about his devotion warred within the chef like a trio of ravenous wolves. Ace's babble stopped, leaving Sanji with the dampened noises of the background. He blinked, realizing the boy's eyes bored into him as if expecting something. What? I said I'm hungry, Uncle Sanji. When we get to Sunny, make me some food, please. And so, Sanji witnessed the pinnacle example of a mixture of Luffy and Nami's genes. A somewhat polite demand for food that he could never deny. Okay, the chef breathed, getting to his feet before lifting the child into his arms. He had to feed anyone who was hungry and the Sunny wasn't that far away. Let me get you some food. Oh, Uncle Sanji, Ace exclaimed before the chef could start moving. Can you teach me how to cook? I want to learn to help everyone. Of course I'll teach you, Sanji responded, but it won't be easy and you aren't going to handle anything in the kitchen until I say so, okay? Yes, Uncle Sanji. The chef kicked, carrying the child into the air with Skywalk as the pair made their way toward the Sunny. That, Nami began, went surprisingly well. You think so? Luffy blinked. I thought it would turn out like that all along. I mean, who wouldn't love Ace? The crew on the ground stood in silence, watching the unlikely pair shrink into the distance. This only lasted for a moment before Amy sighed once more. Dear Goda, I'm bored. Hody's glare was enough to send citizens of Fishman Island scurrying in fear, and that was just fine with him.
Their panic left him a clear path ahead unimpeded by traffic of any kind, even the regular Ryugu soldiers nowhere to be seen. Though a deep part of him enjoyed their reactions, another part of his mind pestered him to rip, tear, and kill, as evidenced by the trail of destruction left in his wake. Houses, businesses, corrals, and apartment buildings crumbled under their own weight due to the damage his fists and water bullets did.
Whatever destruction he caused wouldn't matter when fishmen owned the surface anyway. That plan, however, was still far from succeeding at the moment. Only he and Zio had possession of any energy steroids when last he'd checked, and, considering how many of them he'd needed to use just to defeat Namur, there was little chance his officers had managed to take down any more than 3 of the humans. An inferior species the humans may be, but they'd fought more battles and had more experience. It would take a lot of brute force to destroy them. That and playing with their emotions, showing the people what the Straw Hats truly thought of fishmen. A shadow passed over Hodi's head, the shark glancing upward to see what had caused the phenomena. The hull of a barnacle-laden ship squeezed against the side of the bubble encapsulating the island, and Hodi felt an eye twitch. "That goddamned moron," the new fishman captain hissed as the shadow moved on. "What the hell does he think he's doing? He's chasing after his love like a murderous puppy," a voice said, Hodi whipping around to fire a water bullet at the origin. Caribou opened a hole in himself. The attack passing right thought him before blowing through several buildings and landscapes, each producing a plume of dust and debris. Screams echoed through the air as the results of the attack finalized, but neither Hodi nor Caribou cared about the civilians. You have to admire his blind dedication, even if we both know it will get him nowhere. "Human," the fishman spat by way of greeting, "what do you want?" "My desires haven't changed, partner," the swampman responded, emphasizing the title in such a way that he knew would both get on Hodi's nerves and remind him of their common enemy. "Your officers, Vanderdecken, and I split up to attempt a divide and conquer strategy after we escaped the palace. Unfortunately, I was rebuffed by a trio of Straw Hats myself. 3-on-1 aren't very good odds in many scenarios. I don't know how the others fared, but I assumed that you'd know where they would be waiting to strike the Straw Hats who escaped." "You're useless," Hodi growled. "You lost, yet you have the gall to come straight to me and admit it? You've got balls if nothing else. And you don't have the power needed to take me down easily," Caribou said, a trail of swampy sweat rolling down the side of his face. "I'm a logia, so I'm of more use to you allied against the Straw Hats. It wouldn't make sense for you to try to get rid of me now." Hodi scowled, his expression all the confirmation Caribou needed to relax. With his crew currently Mia after that explosion the ghost ship caused, he needed this tentative peace with Hodi and the new fishmen to last until he could secure a way off the island. "Now that we've got that sorted out, lead onwards to your army, Hodi. You better keep up and stay useful. As soon as you aren't helpful anymore, I'll tear your throat out myself."
"You could try, but I really don't want to find out who would win between the two of us. I'm more interested in why you're carting around one of your own like a slave." Caribou gestured to the chain Hodi held in one hand, said chain leading to the beaten and bruised form of an octopus fishman. "Aren't you all about how fishmen stand over humans? Who is this poor, unfortunate soul?" Hodi tugged on the chain, drawing a pained NYU from the octopus. "A traitor is what he is. This poor excuse of a fishman befriended the very humans that put his friends and our idols in prison, destroying their aspirations." Arlong was wrong, the prisoner muttered weakly. He turned to the pair, one of his eyes swollen shut. "We were wrong, and we did so many horrible things. All you're doing is repeating our mistakes, Hodi." The fishman captain raised a fist, the former pirate flinching in fear in response. "So he disagrees with you," Caribou shrugged. "So does nearly every regular person on the island. That doesn't explain why he's different. Who is he?" "This," Hodi grunted, rattling the chain, "is Hachi, formerly a member of the Sun Pirates and an officer of the Arlong Pirates. After Straw Hat and his crew defeated the Arlong Pirates in the East Blue, Hachi here turned over a new leaf. He turned his back on all the ideals Fisher Tiger and Arlong staked their lives on." "Tiger didn't want this," Hachi argued. "NYU, his death tipped Arlong over the edge. Captain Tiger and Queen Odahime didn't agree on much, but they both hoped for a better future than this. Something better than Arlong and certainly better than you, Hodi. Odahime hoped for a future that would have destroyed us. That's why I got rid of her." Hachi stiffened, his one open eye widening in shock. But the news Arlong gave them had said a human killed the queen." "I understand now," Caribou nodded. "You feel like you're a slave to your ideals, so you've made someone who threw them off into a slave for you," Hodi growled. "You understand nothing. I am a slave to no one and nothing, and I never will be." "I guess that's true." Caribou laughed, almost mocking his tentative ally. "If you were truly so bound by your beliefs, you would have attacked me no matter how I could have helped, and you would have won if you'd popped my bubble. Yet here we stand. You simply wish for power." "I said shut up." Hodi stomped ahead, cursing their need for every advantage over the Straw Hats. The humans had avoided Hammond's crew at the start and routed their attempted takeover of the palace, but hopefully his officers had managed to take down at least a couple of their number. Either way, though, their next altercation would be their last, one way or another. Caribou silently followed the two fishmen into a more rundown part of the island, though the buildings here were still nicer than the parts of the Fishman district he'd seen before. Unlike before when they had moved through Fishman Island proper, this area's residents did not immediately flee. Some shied away, but others seemed to take their presence as a K, walking alongside them in a building cacophony of footsteps.
Like some divine teacher leading a flock of disciples, Hody brought the group to the mouth of a cave and stepped inside. The footsteps grew louder with the echo of the damp walls. Caribou felt the floor slope downward just inside the entrance and allowed himself to lose some of his solid form, following the flow of gravity without concern for the shoes or feet the action dirtied. "Captain!" A quartet of voices chorused as Hody stepped into a hollowed-out atrium lined with the restless bodies of hundreds of new fishmen pirates. Zio, Ikaros, Daruma, and Dosun stood in the middle as if one had been giving a speech. Caribou almost wished he could have heard some of it, but with how loud the herd behind Hody had been, there was no chance they could have snuck up and listened. The swamp man separated from the horde, slathering himself over the walls and out of the way. He didn't need some stupid, diligent, hardcore lackey to notice he was a human and get any ideas.
"My friends," Hody smiled, dragging Hachi forward while the other fishmen dispersed themselves among those already present. The four officers knelt as if bowing to a king, and Caribou imagined they had no qualms with the idea of swearing fealty to their captain if he were to ask them to. "I'm glad to see you all alive and well, though I'd like to know why you aren't still rampaging in the light. How many straw hats did you kill?" The officers shuffled, sweat beading their brows as they looked to each other for possible answers. After half a minute, Ikaros, the tallest among them, stepped forward and knelt once more.
"Captain Hody," he said, his voice as flat as he could make it. "I'm sorry, ch. None of us were able to kill a straw hat, ch. They had us outnumbered and—" Ikaros did not see Hody's stormy look nor the backhanded fist the captain swung cracking against the giant squid fishman's jaw and blasting him into the wall to his right. The rest of the officers bowed lower while the rest of the room fell silent. "None of them?" Hody demanded, his voice rising an octave in intensity. "None? Not even that brat you took?" "The straw hats," Dosun began. "I don't want your goddamned excuses. We are fishmen. We shouldn't have to struggle against mere humans. Not here in our home 10,000 meters below the surface." He turned to the room at large, the crowd flinching away. "Does anyone have good news to report?" "I finished, Captain," Zio whispered into the silence, the wabagong waving his hand. A pair of fishmen from the crowd moved forward with a small chest between them. They dropped it between Zio and Hody before retreating, leaving the scientist to open the lid. The inside contained a multitude of pills striped green and white. "We only have enough for us to get our fill and maybe a select few others of your choosing, but these steroids should allow for twice as much boost with only half of the regular risk." Caribou leaned forward to get a better look. So these were the drugs Hody had mentioned before? The ones that could double one's power? Those could be useful in the future if he could get a hold of some of them. Finally, Hody stepped forward and plucked one pill from the top of the pile. He studied it a moment before shoving 2 handfuls into his pockets. "Get your shares and distribute the rest. Where's Yuzu?" "We have reports of him attacking a local bazaar on the west side," Daruma muttered. Much of his force did not return, but some who did mentioned that his swords were destroyed by the pirate hunter and that he was probably there to acquire new ones he thought could hold up.
"I see." The captain's scowl slackened an iota, the officers letting out a small breath. "What are our current losses?" "Between those who cannot fight and those we fear to be dead," Dosun began, "we've lost almost 700 in total, Dosun." Hody's scowl returned. 700 was but a sliver of the 10,000 that followed him, but Hody knew for a crew of only 14, 15 if one counted the child and 16 if one counted the bird as well. That was no small victory. The average fishman was 10 times stronger than a normal human, but these humans had proven themselves to be above the norm. Little else could be said for a force that could take down an average of 50 fishmen per individual. Unacceptable. How can mere humans be so powerful? They are not all human, Zio reminded him. Between their extra sentience, body modifications, and devil fruits, I fear we may have underestimated them. You're right, Hody admitted, a grim smile widening over his face. He yanked on the chain in his hand, dragging Hachi forward as the captain turned to look to him. Luckily for us, we have a witness who can explain what every member of their group can do. Isn't that right, Hachi? The octopus gulped. Sister, we must move quickly, Fukaboshi insisted, his muscles tense and his eyes studying the surrounding waters. A contingent of soldiers flanked him, 3 on each side. I know this is stressful, but we have no choice. I'm trying, big brother, Shirahoshi muttered, the sweat on her brow disappearing into the water around them before it could form. Yes, Shirahoshi was healthy and, yes, she was a mermaid, but she had still spent all of the years since her mother's death locked away in the hardshell tower.
As a result, she was not in the same physical shape as any of her brothers who were all trained warriors and mermen. Even so, she refused to ask if they could rest or take a break. Now was her time to act in a manner befitting of royalty, and nothing would make her fail the expectations of her family. She redoubled her efforts, catching up to the squadron ahead. Shirahoshi shivered, trying to keep her eyes on her brother's back. The glowing eyes of deep-sea kings shone in whites and reds, contrasting against the inky darkness they hid in all around, the creatures sizing up the group as if weighing the risk of battle if they wanted the giant mermaid princess for a tasty snack. The bubble that contained Fishman Island and the Ryugu Palace shrunk as the group swam, putting as much space between them as they could. But the one thing that instilled the most fear in the young princess was the shape in the distance, the tattered sails barely defined from the rest of the background. The Flying Dutchman moved past the island like a silent monster, barely scraping the bubble, and Shirahoshi knew that the island could have been flooded if they had not enacted this plan. "Big brother, I see him," the mermaid princess cried, one giant finger pointing back at the vessel and the tiny, bubble-enclosed figure standing on its prow. A flash of emotion crossed Fukuboshi's face before it settled into determination, a white-knuckled grip causing his trident to shake. "Shine, Dave, continue to escort the princess," he ordered, no room for argument in his tone. "Samuel, Pone, Ryusaki, and Angle, you four come with me. It's time we rid Fishman Island of our sister locked away from the people." "Sire," the four soldiers chorused, the men following their eldest prince as he turned, charging the coming ship. Shirahoshi watched them go, her eyes widening with unshed tears. "Big brother, princess, we must keep going," Dave insisted, his hand gently tugging on one of Shirahoshi's larger fingers. She blinked, cutting off her one vision of Fukuboshi swimming directly toward danger for her own sake. "Yes," she whispered, internalizing Fukuboshi's words. "Dekken is after you," he'd said. "There is no one else that can lead him away from the people." She would be brave, like her father, mother, and brothers. She had no other choice. Setting her jaw, the princess turned and began to flee once more. As she moved for relative safety, Fukuboshi and his troop did not, the coming battlefield growing larger each second until all five could make out the form of Vanderdecken on the fanged skull figurehead. His eyes widened as the five combatants drew closer, a mad smile showing his sharp teeth. "Bahohoho," he laughed. "I greet you, brother-in-law, welcome to my home. I know it's not big enough for Shirahoshi yet, but I know your father would help pay for some of the renovations as long as I cover the wedding, bahohoho." "Silence, you madman," the prince hissed. "You'll never get your grubby little hands on my sister." "Don't be like that, brother-in, do not call me that," Fukuboshi yelled, cutting the pirate off. "Men, terminate him." As one, the four soldiers readied their spears and charged with a war cry, the noise seeming to surprise the pirate. He stumbled backward, trying to put distance between himself and the weapons even if only for a moment while his hands fumbled for the axes at his waist. In that moment, however, his powers worked against him, the ship closing the distance between him and the soldiers in a scant second. "We've got you now, Dekken," they called as one. "I will not allow this."
The raspy voice that proclaimed such a statement was almost as surprising as the octopus tentacles that rose from the deck, grabbing each of the spears in a grip too tight to allow any motion.
The soldiers felt an instinctive fear slide down their spines as a new player rose from the barnacle-encrusted floor. Its skin was a slimy green, the tentacles attached around the mouth like some horrible beard. A tricorn hat resting in its head matched the long, frayed coat over its shoulders, the whole set drifting in the current. The creature stepped forward, one peg leg thunking against the waterlogged wood while its left hand, the claw of a giant crab, came up to snap one of the spears in two while the other pulled a cutlass from its sheath. "Who are you?" Fukuboshi demanded, having to swim backwards to keep ahead of the supernaturally moving ship. "You may call me Dutchman, Flying Dutchman." The Klabouterman's speech, for a Klabouterman it was halting and slow, his words lengthened and extended in such a way as to draw fear from his foes. The tugging on the spears redoubled, but Dutchman refused to release his face tentacles. "Dekken the Ninth may not be the best capying I've had, but he's still the capying of me ship. I'll not let you lot finish him off and end me legacy, for a captain's orders are absolute. If a capying is to fall in battle, 'tis the duty of a ship to go down alongside him." "Wah, Dutchman," Dekken gasped. His eyes widened as the captain beheld the fearsome visage of his ship's spirit for the first time. He blinked quickly, shaking the surprise from his mind. "No, I shouldn't be surprised. You're the oldest ship still in use. Of course you'd be alive if ferries like the Ghost Ship and Moby are out there." "So it be," the Simic hybrid nodded. "Your orders, Captain?" The intangible math of risk, reward, war, and power flinted through Vanderdecken's mind as this new player shifted many long shots into something much more in his favor. The devil fruit user grinned, his eyes alight with the madness of 9 generations of obsession. "Defend me, Dutchman. Defend me until either Shirahoshi is my bride or dead at my feet, bahohoho." Finally, La Ti Do. Ryuboshi sang as he watched Brook escort the last civilian, an avid fan of Soul King, from the plaza. Color lined the ring that looked down into the plaza proper. Hundreds of those who had fallen to Brook's music hours ago now disregarding their already appended schedules to watch the fight they'd been told would happen here. Every now and then, the sound of one of the princes or one of the Straw Hats monikers would filter down as the crowd cheered for them like celebrities. All that up and downs got me a little sore, Mamboshi agreed, trying to rub his back with his shorter arms. My mambo's not going to be as fluid as usual. Thank you for your assistance, your highnesses, Coby said, bowing low, while the rest of the Straw Hats present watched. The two princes glanced at each other, not having expected such manners from a pirate. And to you as well, the older brother of the pair responded with a small flourish. We would not have finished in such a timely manner if not for your help, Durami Fa. Just in time, too. My observation tells me that there is a massive army coming this way from underground. Underground? The royals gasped. It's about time, Amy hissed, smashing her parasol into the ground next to her, chunks of stone cracking and giving way under its increased mass. I've been itching for a fight since those bastards tried to down us. I couldn't agree more, Amy, Mary said, punching one palm. To be fair to them, the second time was Captain Luffy's fault, but I still blame them. As if in response, a loud boom echoed through the plaza, its origins a rising cloud of dust. The pirates, princes, and crowd all turned as shadows formed in the airborne debris, a host of fishmen filtering out. They ringed the plaza, quickly surrounding the allied forces, yet their numbers continued to flow from the tunnel until the officers and Hody himself brought up the rear. Luffy vanished, a mere afterimage and wisp of steam, all that remained in his original spot fading into the air. Captain Luffy, Hog, his feet pounded against the earth, each step carrying the human captain closer to his adversary. His arms trailed behind, the speed stretching them back as they rotated into pseudo-springs ready to unleash a double-jet rifle on the fishman. Hody smirked as Luffy materialized before him, arms ready, and the fishman snapped. A body appeared, Luffy's eyes widening as his attack went wide. One fist plowed into the wall beside the tunnel while the other carved a trench into the ground. Between them, a hair's breadth from both, knelt the trembling form of Hachi. The human paused, causing two of the officers to bring on a hammer and a spear on his person. Luffy did not so much see this as feel it with his haki. Aborting his failed first strike before the weapons could hit him, the rubberman returned to his nakama and glared at the offending sentient, hostage and crushed ground before him.
Exactly as planned, Hody smirked, one hand resting on Hachi's head as if to still the octopus, shaking. In response, the shaking doubled. Human, the snail.
Right here, Caribou said. The snail connected to the island's announcement system, stolen from the palace during their attack, rose from the swamp man's covered palm so he could hand it over. The snail awoke, a moment of feedback sounding across the island. Residents of Fishman Island, Hody began, never taking his eyes off his foes lest they try anything funny to ruin his moment. You may recognize my voice, but I'll introduce myself again anyway. I am Hody Jones, captain of the new Fishman Pirates. Currently, I have almost 10,000 men in the Goncourt Plaza ready to face the total combined forces of the Straw Hat Pirates and the Ryugu Kingdom. Such a shame, though, that they could only scrounge up less than 20 fighters in your defense. The watching crowd broke into whispers, fear and anger palpable to all as they way he let his smirk widen as he forged ahead, striking while the iron was hot. The Ryugu Kingdom no longer has the power to protect Fishman Island or our race. You know this. The king has become a husk of his former self since Odahime's death, and that is why I will take the responsibility from them by force. I will become your new king, and under me, we will claim the surface for our own. Too long have we fishmen and merfolk wallowed down in the depths of this ocean. Too long have we played nice with the humans who have attacked and belittled us. So come pay witness to this moment in history when Hody Jones and the new Fishman Pirates kill your paltry protectors. His smirk widened into a maniacal grin, his gaze never breaking eye contact with Luffy's glare. And Straw Hats, do put up a fight. Let's give these people a good show. And Straw Hats, do put up a fight. Let's give these people a good show. Madame Charlie screamed, her strangled sobs bouncing through suddenly still Mermaid Cafe. Her slender arms clutched at her head as Kami dropped a tea set in shock. The smaller mermaid hopped to her employer, but Charlie's writhing did not allow her the ability to get closer. Madam, Kami cried, her voice even mixed with a dozen other mermaids barely registering through the wails of anguish. The waitresses abandoned their duties, crowding around their boss, though not so close as to get hit by her flailing tail. Madam Charlie, what is it? The screaming stopped, the shark mermaid curling into a fetal position as she tired to put her mind back together and decipher the pieces of what she had just seen. Sea kings warring against each other on two separate fronts, but they were not what they appeared. When the future was uncertain, those in play would not be themselves in her visions. When things were represented, then the future hung on a fork, able to fall one of two ways. Madame Charlie, what did you see? She swallowed, the headache thumping against the inside of her skull made focusing difficult. Her voice came out with a rasp, hoarse through her raw throat. I saw two battlefields, one above the other. I saw sea kings tearing at each other for the fate of the island. The battlefield below we know to be the Goncourt Plaza, but it is the one above that will decide the fate of the island. There, a shark defends a goddess from a demon and his monster. Should the goddess fall? Charlie swallowed again, her throat suddenly dry for more reasons than her screaming. If the goddess falls, the world will plunge into another void century. Residents of Fishman Island, Hody began, never taking his eyes off his foes lest they try anything funny to ruin his moment. You may recognize my voice, but I'll introduce myself again anyway. I am Hody Jones, captain of the new Fishman Pirates. Currently, I have almost 10,000 men in the Goncourt Plaza ready to face the total combined forces of the Straw Hat Pirates and the Ryugu Kingdom. Such a shame, though, that they could only scrounge up less than 20 fighters in your defense. The Ryugu Kingdom no longer has the power to protect Fishman Island or our race, and that is why I will take the responsibility from them by force. I will become your new king, and under me, we will claim the surface for our own. Too long have we fishmen and merfolk wallowed down in the depths of this ocean. Too long have we played nice with the humans who have attacked and belittled us. So come pay witness to this moment in history when Hody Jones kills your paltry protectors. His smirk widened into a maniacal grin, his gaze never breaking eye contact with Luffy's glare. And Straw Hats, do put up a fight. Let's give these people a good show. The echoes of Hody's last statement faded into the surrounding air, only the uncomfortable shifting of the watching crowd a muted sound in the otherwise still atmosphere.
The pirates on the ground, those being Luffy, Zoro, Coby, Usopp, Nami, Grace, Amy, Chopper, Robin, Mary, Brooke, and Billy, along with the younger two princes of the Ryugu Kingdom, Ryuboshi and Manbashi, and Kaku slowly formed a circle. Each set of eyes darted from one scowling face to another as both armies, big and small, sized each other up.
This is bad, a mermaid whispered from her spot in the crowd above. What are their chances? A small fishman to her side questioned, a waver in his voice. I don't know, it looks like this will be quality versus quantity, but 100,000? I know the Straw Hats have a reputation, but... And we don't have Prince Fukaboshi here, another bystander said. The other princes are strong, but I don't think they'll be enough to turn the tide like this. Wait. The fishman blinked. That hostage. That's Hachi of the Six Swords. He was a member of Fisher Tigers and Arlong's crews back in the day. Why would they? They didn't like what he had to say, another voice commented, a certain tall anglerfish fishwoman stepping up beside the talking trio. Madam Finwaters, the fishman gasped, squeezing against the others to give the head of the red light district extra room with which to observe the coming battle below. If you don't mind my asking, what do you mean? When Hachi returned to the island 2 years ago, he started telling anyone who would listen about what sorts of people he believed the Straw Hat to be with anecdotes of Arlong's defeat and their actions on the Sabaody archipelago just before the War of the Best as if in preparation for their arrival.
This set the groundwork even before Namur returned to give his side of the story from the war. Between them both, one who before had hated humans and another who had constantly fought to help protect the island through an emperor, the will of the people began to bend back toward what our late queen wished. Hody could not have that. Namur was too strong to go after, but Hachi was not so powerful. And now, he is a shield.
That's horrible, the mermaid gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. He can't really believe winning this fight will make his plans work, the third fishman agreed. Won't it? Madame Fishwaters countered. Should the Straw Hats lose here and 2 of the 3 princes die, who will be strong enough to stand up to Hody Jones and his men? King Neptune, Prince Fukaboshi, Princess Shirahoshi. They may be able to put up a fight, but what would be the cost? Would you be willing to pay it? No one had an answer or declaration for that, causing Madame Finwaters to turn back to the standoff in the plaza. That's what I thought. One way or another, all this wacky nonsense will be very entertaining. Come on, Hody yelled, swinging one arm wide. His voice dropped silence over everyone in the area like a wet blanket, each individual hanging on to his every word whether they wanted to or not. Are you a coward as well as a human, Straw Hat? What happened to all that drive you had just a moment ago? He waited, arm outstretched, but only silence answered him. His smile dimmed as neither Luffy nor any of his band took the bait. They glared at him in unabashed hatred. Honestly, I'm confused, Straw Hat. Confused about a lot of things, but mostly about all of you.
You failed to take us up on our generous offer to spare your lives by swearing your loyalty to us on your entrance and ran away like cowards, but you came running when we tried to pit the entire island against you. You split into groups to face my officers, yet they tell me that you, Straw Hat, never fought. Then you sent Namur after me. He put up a good fight, but unlike him, your crewmates had the gall to just not roll over and die like they should have.
Namur's dead, Usopp whispered into the silence, a collective muttering of shock and panic filtering down from the citizens above. Even Madame Finwaters felt an eyebrow rise. She hadn't expected that, but he's a Whitebeard commander. Was a Whitebeard commander, Hody corrected with a laugh. Now that human-following piece of trash can join his beloved Whitebeard and Firefist and he. A fist slammed into Hody's face, his flesh distending around the knuckles as they sunk deeper in. Reality caught up to the kinetic force a moment later, blasting the fishman like a ragdoll backwards into the wall. The stone that enclosed the plaza cracked and shattered as yet another wave of dust obscured the area. Hachi hit the ground, friction burns across his forehead where Hody's fingers were ripped away. The office's faces morphed from superiority to shock in a heartbeat, the aftershocks of the filling vacuum ruffling their hair. They turned slowly, sweat beading their brows as they took in the absolutely livid visage of the human captain. Even from across the distance, they could feel the contracted pupils shadowed under his straw hat as he stared bloody murder into their souls. "Don't you dare mention him," Luffy growled, his arms snapping back into place. Steam billowed from his red-tinted skin. "I won't let anyone say that about my brother."
Ah, are you still sore about that? As one, all eyes turned from Luffy to the shadow in the dust, Hody wiping a trail of blood from the side of his lips.
A part of his mind begged him to not piss off the predator before him, but he buried that stream of thought. Rather, he needed to poke the bear so he could show the world Luffy's true colors. Hody was certain that would turn the citizens of Fishman Island against the Straw Hats. After all, he just attacked first. Your brother was a weak little human just like you and he got what he deserved. Shut up. A pulse of palpable force emanated from the circle of pirates, draining the very color of the world into black and white as time slowed, stretching each moment to its maximum. A weight settled on the shoulders of every person watching.
And the first body dropped. He was a random member of the new Fishman Pirates, armed with a club and dressed in ragged clothing in need of a wash. His eyes rolled as he body dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. The thump of his form hitting the dirt echoed like a gunshot and acted as the first domino of 49,999 others, give or take a few for the citizens watching who fainted in shock.
Holy shit, Daruma hissed as half of their force lost consciousness. What the fuck is this human? That power, Ryuboshi gawked. I'm glad he's on our side, Manboshi agreed. My brother was not weak, Luffy stated, no room for argument about that fact. Say that again and I'll give you a chance to meet him in person. Geez, Luffy, Zoro sighed, rattling his swords at his side. There goes half my fun. Oh, Luffy blinked, the force around him dissipating instant LRO. You should have said something first. Kyahahaha. Amy laughed as the onlookers exploded into excited cheers, clapping as if they were watching a play or a sports game. Beside her, Nami's eyes were a little unfocused, the navigator unconsciously licking her lips as she remembered the power rolling through the air. So that's how it feels to be friends with the Conqueror when they unleash their haki. Feels a lot better on this side. That was awesome, Captain, Mary cheered. Look at their faces, priceless. My theories were correct, Robin nodded, sliding a pair of sunglasses over her eyes. It does appear that Conqueror's haki may be hereditary, fascinating.
What he just did only works once. Hody yelled, trying his level best to rally his remaining men without knowing if what he said was true. We still have 5,000. That's more than enough to take these humans and blood traders down.
Oh, are we starting? Grace asked as the fishmen around them let out a war cry and charge. Paints rose from various pockets within her suit, the liquids and gases growing into orbs and trails that revolved around her. Colorful galaxy. Second gear. A fresh plume of steam rose from the captain. Everyone, we have an audience, hold back if you can but go for the throat if you don't have any other option. I, Captain, Coby announced, growing into one of his half-transformations. He popped his neck and rolled his shoulders, the familiar ache in his back reminding him what was at stake. He drew his swords, holding the handles the same way one might hold a conductor's baton on account of his lengthened nails. It was awkward, but he had a feeling he'd need the speed. Slasher mode. Rigging art, Mary called, an illogical amount of rope falling from her sleeves as, beside her, a still-silenced Kaku grew into his man-beast form and drew his swords. Let's show these fakers what real pirates can do, bahahaha. Arm point, don't get too hurt, everyone, we all want to celebrate without recovery getting in the way, right? I don't have a cool style name, Usopp lamented, readying his kabuto with the first of many pop-green horrors he would unleash on their foes. I'll figure something out later, come get some. These are the ones who put our baby in danger, Nami noted, her perfect cleam attacked little more than a whirl in her hands as bubbles tinted blue and red rose around her. Shadows rolled over the pirates as her cloud grew in size. They'll get no mercy from me, Luffy. These guys aren't too tough, Zoro smirked. Good thing there are a lot of them. I couldn't go all out before and Kitetsu's inching to cut something. Do restrain yourself, Zoro, Robin advised. Her arms casually crossed over her chest as numerous eyes formed across her limbs. Those on the sunny will be descending forthwith and we mustn't allow little Ace-chan to witness dismemberment so soon. What a terrifying comment, Robin, Brooke noted. It makes me want to empty my stomach. Not that I have a stomach anymore. Yo-ho-ho.
I suppose I can scrounge something up, Amy grinned, pulling a pebble from within her clothing.
Wah, Billy supplied. Alright, everyone, Luffy finished as the first of the new fishman pirates got close enough to raise their weapons. Let's start off big if you got it, Gum Gum Jet Gatling. 3 sword style. Dragon Twister, 5-point slashing, Pterodactyl Swarm. Green Star. Rafflesia, Thunderstorm Tempo, Chemical Bending, Artisan Explosion. Compact Kilo Cannon, Rosario Blizzard, Cian Fleur, Clunch. Rigging Art. Gordian's Knots, Party Music, 3rd 5th Fantasia. Wah, Merman Combat, Great Dragon Gate. Merman Combat. 7 Great Treasures, the Straw Hats, and Friends, attacks shot from their circles simultaneously. Fists, tornadoes, flying slashes, horrid smells, lightning, explosions, a pebble with the mass of a small meteor, hooves, bloomed arms, giant balls of rope, music, more lightning, tempest kicks, and swords assaulted the fishmen without mercy. Oh ho, I should invite them for a visit, Madame Finwaters chuckled as she watched her countrymen slowly comprehend the sudden combination. The information Kaku, Amy, and Usopp had given her helped Madame Finwaters pick out the devil fruit effects from those that were, in their words, not natural, but not from devil fruits. Mayhaps that will assuage any hard feelings in lieu of something else. I certainly don't want that sort of power pointed at me and my girls. Why would they attack you, Madame Finwaters? The fishman beside her questioned. The fishwoman didn't answer, opening her fan to hide her needle-like smile from the rest of the world. Down below, the understanding of those on the ground began to catch up to those with a bird's eye view. Their range of vision was limited, but there was only so much a warrior needed to see before they knew they were outclassed in every possible way. Bits of the plaza's floor were scorched black, smoke and flash-boiled steam rising from those unlucky enough to have been struck with the lightning. Others cried for help, holding debilitating cuts that ran red with blood. Still more now writhed on the ground clutching at broken limbs or calling that they could no longer feel their legs or tails. That was not to mention those that simply laid there like slugs, dead to the world in the bliss of unconsciousness.
At least, they hoped they were just unconscious. Fuck this, a particularly large fishman muttered, taking a step away from the carnage as he stared at the pummeled, burnt, slashed, twisted, and otherwise incapacitated bodies of his crewmates. Those guys are too much.
What did you say? The fishman stiffened, his head turning slowly to see the muscular, gray-haired form of his captain standing behind him. The words he wanted to say did not come, the excuse he had dying in his throat. See, Captain. That's not, I didn't. I believe your exact words were, fuck this, those guys are too much. Am I right? Turning your back on our beliefs just to save your own life. How cowardly. You're no pirate of mine. The terrified lackey could not move as Hody waved his hand forward, Dosun, Daruma, and Ikaros answering the call to action as they advanced on the would-be deserter. They had yet to reach him, however, when a shing sounded, the man seizing up. A single line crossed his torso diagonally, the man having only enough time to look down in shock before he fell into 100 pieces. Behind the no longer humanoid remains crouched Hyuzu, his ever-present alcohol nowhere to be seen. I'm back, Captain, the swordsman muttered as the swords at his hips clicked into their sheaths, an air of deference in his words that had not been there before. Hyuzu, Hody greeted. I trust your shopping went well? Yes. The octopus merman held up the swords he'd acquired. 6 of them were newer than his previous swords had been, but the 2 in his hands were of a much higher quality. They were both the shiny gray of polished steel with gold-lined handles wrapped in blue. Each cross guard was circular, the one on his left with a lion carved into the guard while the right had a gazelle. I stole 6 from some blacksmiths, but Challenger Deep found me a pair of skilled grade swords that should stand up to the ones the pirate hunter has. These are Hishokusha and Imono, Predator and Prey, a matched set. I don't think I've ever seen you so excited, Kya, Daruma grinned. Well, this isn't just for the money anymore. Hyuzu turned, glaring at one particular pirate, it's personal. Whatever it is, I like it, Zio commented, stepping forward to offer the hired man a handful of pills. Here, these should help. These don't look like the ones from before, Hyuzu said, taking the drugs. They aren't. I've enhanced them. Whomever you fought before will stand no chance against you now. Perfect. Hyuzu's grin showed for only a moment before he tilted his head back, swallowing every one of the pills in his hand before any of the others could get a word in ever, his hair turning a shale gray as his body visibly bulked up. He let out a breath, a puff of steam passing his lips as a self-satisfied smirk grew. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to go murder the pirate hunter and his woman. Don't forget the rest. Hody laughed as the swordsmen blurred away, the captain now somewhat reassured of their victory. Across the plaza, the circle of defenders had broken into smaller groups of 2 to 4, each fighting their own separate battles for the most part. Zoro and Robin stood back to back by virtue of chance. Or, at least, that's what one of them would say with the truthfulness of the statement in question. Familiar adversary incoming, Robin commented, her voice carrying the same weight as if she were only talking about the weather, currently partially sunny with a chance of sudden electrocution. Zoro's lone eye turned, his body spinning to catch the sudden pair of blades that clanged against Kitetsu 3. Yuzu's red-eyed grin staring down on the pair. We meet again, pirate hunter, the octopus merman said, his other legs fanning out before coming down on the human pirate. Zoro's neck twisted as Wado Ichimonji and Shisui came up, parrying. His lone eye widened as one of the swords slid between his defense, landing a shallow cut along his side. He pushed, shoving Yuzu back. Damn, Zoro hissed. You're way faster than before.
I'd estimate nearly 650% faster, Robin offered, bloomed arms cracking and breaking limbs and spines without a visible backwards glance. She didn't need one with her powers, after all. He appears to have aged almost 40 years as well. Most interesting.
More like annoying. This power has cost me some of my life, Yuzu admitted. But then again, isn't the life of a swordsman forfeit from the moment they raise their blade in battle? I think that's the first time you've ever said something like a real swordsman. What can I say? I've forsaken my way for the money and you beating me showed me that. Nostalgia welled in Zoro's chest as his opponent spoke. A memory from a certain restaurant coming to his mind's eye. A memory when he was on the other side of this type of discussion. This right here. This isn't for the money or for Hody Jones. I will defeat you, Roronoa Zoro, because I am Fishman Island's greatest swordsman. That is my way of the sword. The men paused, Robin raising an eyebrow as both Yuzu and Zoro sheathed their blades. The merman reached into his tentacles and the human into his cloak, both pulling out a container of alcohol. Like mirror images, the two raised their respective bottles, shook them to confirm that they were not empty, and tossed them to each other. Both sniffed what they had been given before they, again as one, downed the contents, wiped their lips with a hand, and tossed the bottles aside. So this is the rumored bromance of the battlefield. Robin blinked as Zoro unraveled his bandana. It appears Grace and Usopp had not exaggerated the silent nuance of understanding that such a ritual entails.
Do not get this confused, human, Hyuzu said, drawing his swords once more. I despise your mate.
We're not mates, Zoro interjected through Wado Ichimonji.
With every fiber of my being. That said, I respect his strength of both body and ideals. I was unworthy before, but I have resolved to earn the same. No matter who loses, no matter how short it may be, this battle will be remembered. That was the purpose of our trade.
Come earn your remembrance, Yuzu of the Eight Sword Style. I will, Pirate Hunter, Roronoa Zoro. The battlefield rocked with a massive crash as, for a third time, the pair moved in sync, their blades ringing. What's the status, Devil Bro? Frankie questioned from the grass of the hovering Thousand Sunny. A patch of the deck laid open before him, the cyborg's smaller hands finishing some last-minute thing that wasn't absolutely perfect within the ship's inner workings. Bottles started, Jin answered, his voice carried from the crow's nest through an intercom. Don Luffy's hockey knocked out half of them and open and volleys knocked a few hundred more down a peg. I think they could win without us. Let's go, Sunny's voice cheered, resonating from within the bowels of her hull. Don't want to miss the fight. Well, you heard her, Frankie grunted, shutting the panel while shifting to another intercom. Cook bro, we're going down. You got ace? We're ready, Sanji's voice answered, the man stepping out of the kitchen with the navigator's son tootling behind, crumbs and bits of sauces around the boy's mouth. It's time for me to show Ace why he should follow me and become a gentleman instead of an uncouth barbarian like the Mosshead. Mosshead, Ace sang. When cooking on the seas, one's gotta use every piece of the ingredients cause the seas mean sometimes. Frankie and Jin blinked but did not comment. Frankie filed Ace's ability to remember rules of thumb before shaking the thought away. Alright, everyone, hold on to something. Sunny, time to show them what you've got. Aye, Maker, of their own accord. The ropes tied around the railing of the Sunny connecting her to the beaten sea lion above undid themselves. The Sunny hung, suspended, for a second before gravity seemed to notice that something in the sky did not belong there and took hold. Sanji hooked a leg into the railing, freeing a hand to catch the orange hat that tried to float off the toddler who was too busy cheering to notice. Yahoo! The ship screamed as she plummeted toward the battlefield. Yahoo! Ace echoed from Sanji's hold. Yee. I'm starting to realize this was a bad idea, Jin cried. Sunny. Frankie yelled. Prep a weak gown cannon to fire when we land, we're gonna make our mark. Yeah, the lion figurehead's mouth opened, the metal cylinder already building energy to fire. The atom wood ship hit the ground with a tremendous crash, the rock and stone beneath shattering under the sturdy weight of the hull. Hody and his office's eyes widened as the ship of the Straw Hat Pirates appeared, prepped cannon already aimed at them. Afraid of what something built by the infamous cyborg could do, Hody grabbed Hachi by the clothes and hoisted the captive into the way of the attack. They've got Hachi, Jin yelled. Sunny, redirect. The eyes of the figurehead widening, Sunny clamped the mouth shut. Even so, the energy needed somewhere to go lest it explode within her hull. That wouldn't kill her, but it would hurt like hell and require repairs. Avoiding that, Sunny opened other connections, blasting the gown cannon into a coup de burst in the opposite direction. Look out! A megaphone-enhanced warning from Frankie allowed the princes to disengage from the contingent of foes they were fighting, the pair of brothers diving out of the way as a beam of silvery light thundered past. The air around them rose in temperature exponentially, air pressure carving lines into the ground. The unfortunate pirates did not have the luxury of avoidance, their screams lost in the noise until they ceased to exist. Ryuboshi's eyes followed the trail of destruction to the ship. What was that? That, his brother began, was awesome. It seems the irony of war. The other side of the battle had similar questions. What was that? Daruma gasped. That, Hody growled, will be a goddamned pain in the ass. Fukaboshi grunted, his trident pressing against the sword of the Flying Dutchman's klabouterman. Had they been anywhere except underwater, sparks would have flown from the point of contest, but as it were, the two simply wrestled with strength, knuckles white from the strain. Currents pulled at their clothing, the prince needing to put in the extra effort to stay ahead of his foe since he couldn't plant his non-existent feet.
Bahahoho. Vanderdecken laughed as he watched the battle, just barely avoiding attacks from the 4 soldiers that had accompanied the prince with a pair of axes. He threw one, a soldier cutting off his next attack to Incold get too far toward the princess ahead. Vanderdecken just pulled out another axe. That's it, Dutchman. Show my future brother-in-law that I can protect my bride. Bahahoho.
Orders are orders, the fairy muttered. Liar's dice.
Dutchman pulled back, the loss of force causing Fukabashi the nearly stumble. He caught himself, however, the prince spinning his trident into a whirling shield that caught the coming slash and served to help propel him alongside the supernaturally moving ship. His trident slowed as the klabouterman feigned a kick only for a pair of small items to slam into his stomach. The shark merman wheezed, his condition only made worse by the wall coming up to meet him.
What? Fukaboshi gasped, a set of 5 dice popping out of the indents they'd made in his torso. They landed on 4 5s and a 4, Fukaboshi noticed unhelpfully. The metallic scent of his own blood tried to send his shark instincts into a frenzy, but he pushed them down. He couldn't go haywire. Not here and now. Off to the side, one of his soldiers flew past, having dove for another axe in the soldier's battle with the ship's captain and, in doing so, exited the ship's slipstream. How? I've had 8 different captains before copying Decken IX and none of them had a fruit. They had find their own styles, and several used subterfuge and trickery. I could easily beat ye that way, but why do that? Dutchman's tentacled face grinned, noodly appendages moving aside to show 2 sets of razor-sharp shark teeth. 'Tis a shame for ye Decken V was a bloodthirsty hammerhead. Shit! Fukaboshi yelped, powering through the pain to dive away from the bite that would have taken a good chunk out of his shoulder. He came out of his roll, instincts screaming at him. His arms moved before he could fully comprehend, catching Dutchman's cutlass between 2 prongs of his trident. The hit rattled the weapon in his hand, the klabouterman pulling back for several more driving strikes that the merman scrambled to block. This is the might own 9 generations of fishman pirates, Dutchman said, his blows forcing Fukaboshi to backpedal lest he be overwhelmed. Each strike seemed stronger, faster, and more powerful than the one before. I've heard o' your prowess, Prince Fukaboshi, son o' Neptune. They call ye the greatest warrior o' Fishman Island. Show me what that means. Then I will show you. The prince loosened the reins on his instincts slightly, his hair growing a touch wilder as tiny scales formed over his arms. He all but leapt forward, darting through the water like a striking cobra. King Dragon style. Lunging viper.
Metal weapons clashed, strike for strike and block for block met and matched in milliseconds. Against his better judgment, Fukabashi found himself grinning the way he did whenever he and his brothers would spar. He became a whirlwind of muscle and steel, beating against the seemingly impenetrable defense of the planted amalgamation he called his opponent.
Dragon's Fang. Jones Gambit. Dutchman sidestepped Fukaboshi's downward lunge at the last moment, the attack cutting off a pair of his face tentacles and planting the points of the trident into the deck. The klabouterman let out a hiss before stomping his peg leg down on the prince's tail. His claw grabbed the merman by the hair, tearing him away from his weapon. Looks like me bet paid off. You're 100 years too young to have a chance of overpowering me, boy. In one motion, Dutchman's cutlass cut a gash into the prince's side just below the ribs. He let out a cry of pain, the fairy stretching his captive's wound with his hold on both the prince's hair and tail. Blood leaked from the cut, diffusing into the surrounding waters. Your Highness, one of the prince's soldiers called, the fishman crawling his way back to the foredeck through the current. He hefted an axe, aiming for the klabouterman's back. Die, you monster. Pone, no, Fukaboshi cried, but his words could not stop what had been set in motion.
Dutchman tossed the prince aside and turned, his pincer catching Pone's axe by the shaft, pulling him off balance. The soldier fell forward through the water, his eyes widening in shock, before the rest of the ship's ferry caught up. His sword flashed, the blade passing into and through the armor and chest of the man. The fishman hacked up a glob of crimson as that same color began to tint the waters around the new holes in his armor.
Pone. So this is what it feels like, Dutchman laughed, his pupils dilating as he raised the axe in his claw. A flick of his other wrist tossed Pone over the side, his limp body trailing red, this time to not return. This is true battle. This is the rush of blood in your veins, your heartbeat thundering in your ears, the taste of another man's life in the water, ah ha ha ha. You monster, Fukaboshi growled, his knuckles white against the golden hue of his trident. What's wrong, Prince? The fairy asked, snapping the axe's blade from the handle. Ye must be willing to both take life and give your own in battle. That's war. Highness, we're here to protect you, another pair of voices announced. Fukaboshi's eyes darted to the right as Ryusaki and Samuel broke away from their fight with Vanderdecken to assist him, leaving Angle to delay the captain alone. But Decken, the prince protested. Dave and Shine can handle anything Angle misses, Samuel, a pricklefish merman, said. Decken isn't the dangerous one here. They say T become part o' the crew is T, become part o' the ship, Dutchman smirked, dropping to one knee to shove his claw into the deck. It phased into the waterlogged wood, an identical pincer appearing from beneath Samuel, catching him by the tail. The merman gasped as the claw drew blood, pulling him down. They don't know how true that is. Ryusaki, Samuel yelled, tossing his spear to his fellow soldier. With his hands now free, the immobilized merman grabbed the claw so it could not retreat. Get him while he's gone. He cut himself off before a scream could, the claw tightening around his tail. Ryusaki's eyes hardened, the fishman gritting his teeth and advancing on the kneeling Klabouterman. Dutchman's expression did not change even as his eyes turned on this new threat.
This isn't personal, Ryusaki said, bringing his spear down and into the body of the flying Dutchman's spirit. Dutchman gasped, his face turning from the spear in his chest to the soldier and back several times. Ryusaki pulled, but his spear did not move. His foe cracked a grin.
Ye don't know much about Klaboutermans, do ye? Dutchman asked, his tentacles slithering up the shaft of the spear before taking hold of the fishman's hands. The pincer sticking out of the deck started to move, sliding its way back toward Dutchman while dragging Samuel by the tail. This form isn't me real body. I am the flying Dutchman itself. This whole ship's me body. That means whenever ye do this. He tapped on the spear with his cutlass. It's worth as much as a celestial dragon's promise. Dutchman's tentacles continued their way up Ryusaki's arms, the fishman struggling with all his might to free himself. Suckers left little rings of inflamed skin behind while the soldier found himself being pulled closer and closer to the fairy's face. The claw reattached itself to Dutchman's arm, allowing the amalgamation to stand, dragging Ryusaki's face closer. Samuel struggled, unable to do anything more than flop on the deck. What was it ye said before? He questioned as the fishman squeaked, the tips of the tentacles getting closer to his eyes and other orifices. This isn't personal. Well, this isn't personal neither. Just fun for me. Ryusaki's dying screams echoed over the deck, sending dread down the spine of the prince nearby. Fukaboshi held the still bleeding gash in his side. The entire play he just witnessed happened too quickly for him to recover and intervene. He couldn't afford to wait for his wound to clot naturally if he was to defeat Deccan's newest attack dog. He forced himself upright, grabbing for his trident Einel, strangled gasp, meeting the same fate as Ryusaki. Using his weapon like a crutch, the prince maneuvered himself beside the wall shielding the ship's insides. He laid one hand against the wood. I'm sorry, father, Fukaboshi whispered as Dutchman turned, ripping the spear free of his spectral innards. The buff merman flexed, fingers digging into the old paneling causing spiderweb cracks to form. Dutchman's eyes widened as he clutched at his torso in true pain for the first time. Stop that, Dutchman ordered, turning from his murderous revelry to where the prince was causing him bodily harm. You told me never to do this, Fukaboshi continued, ignoring the Klabouterman. The price for such information had been too high, but it revealed the ship's weakness. Vanderdecken will never have Shirahoshi. What are you doing? How dare, Dutchman faltered. The shark merman's countenance changed, an aura of expected, inherited dominance overtaking the adrenaline-driven shaking he'd had. The prince turned, Dutchman's gaze catching the tail end of the golden sheen growing over Fukaboshi's eyes. They now glowed in the semi-darkness of the deep, casting their light across the deck like the sparkle from a mound of treasure. That force flared around the prince once more, blue scales starting to cover his exposed skin as he allowed his instincts to run wild with the power of his ancient ancestors, his bleeding slowing to a mere trickle. His hair, usually a dark blue, began to slowly gray at the tips. But that's, Deccan 7 said the royal family lost that power 100 years ago. Though it may cost me my life, I will protect all that I love. There was an echo to Fukaboshi's unnaturally calm voice. Dutchman stepped back, the survival instincts of 9 generations all screaming at him to flee, contested only by his will to follow orders and the knowledge that he could never leave the ship. I will now show you why the Tamate box had been locked away since the Void Century, why we are the royal family of the Ryugu Kingdom, and why I am heir apparent. The energy steroids Hody Jones stole are a mere imitation of the forbidden power we hold in our blood. Behold, Flying Dutchman, the dauntless dragon of the deep. And Prince Fukaboshi, eldest son of King Neptune, heir apparent to the throne of the Ryugu Kingdom, greatest warrior of the island, and lead general of the army, roared. They're so weak, Daruma complained, hopping in place as if to relieve some of his stress. And they call themselves fishmen? Kyakia, weaklings, all of them. These humans are much stronger than we gave them credit for, Zio agreed with a nod. That said, we proposed fighting them with numbers knowing that it would be a prolonged battle, so we must let our forces wear them down before our own involvement. We've still got a few tricks up our sleeves, Ikaros agreed, eyeing the high-speed battle Yuzu and Zoro participated in, both so focused on each other that they seemed unaware of the collateral to the new fishman forces around them. Still, seeing what Yuzu can do now makes me want to get in there, Patience, Hody ordered, his stance almost relaxed. The humans are strong, but our force is overwhelming. Even if they beat the rest, we have the luxury of bringing out our strongest while still fresh. Besides, Hody paused, turning his eye to the bubble above. This isn't the only battle. What do you mean by that? Caribou asked, his head upside down over the band of officers while his body stretched into a tall curve. Daruma's nose wrinkled as he was forced to hop away from a splattering drop of mud. I understand the king and princess aren't here, but the princes are, right? You said they were the most dangerous part of the royal family. Yes, all 3 princes. The oldest one isn't here. So he's a coward. Fukaboshi is many things. Deluded, a blood traitor, and the current heir, but he is no coward. Hody shook his head. No, he would be here by now if he could. Odahime, the late queen, instilled family first, pro-human ideas in the king and her children, but they are still some of the strongest warriors on the island. Whatever mad plan Deccan pulled must carry enough thread to the princess and enough chance of success to demand attention over us. That's helpful, but I don't know if I should feel insulted that the strongest prince is focusing on him instead. Well, Caribou blinked. I did not expect that from Deccan. I wonder what he did. Prince Fukaboshi roared. The dauntless dragon, Dutchman whispered, taking in the berserker state of the once regal warrior while settling into a defensive stance. Where Fukaboshi had held himself tall with an iron grasp on his emotions, he now stood like a mindless beast emanating waves of rage, his back hunched and teeth bared in a snarl. One hand held his trident while the fingers of the other dug into the wall beside him. It was a power Dutchman thought to never see, and one a part of him wished he had missed. According to the legends Dutchman had heard years ago, the dauntless dragon was first discovered, or created, by the founder of the Ryugu Kingdom, Queen Umidora, an anglerfish mermaid, during the Void Century. It was the result of questionable chemical experiments in an attempt to distinguish the royal family so they could never be usurped. The power passed into hidden knowledge sometime near Dutchman's creation and, during the time of Vanderdecken V, the crew caught wind that the then Prince Hidoken showed none of the royal power and that whatever chemicals had granted it were now too diluted. Obviously, that information was either a clever lie or it simply skipped that generation. Whatever the reason, the dauntless dragon now stood before him, eyes golden and unblinking. Ye think ye can scare me with such a paltry light show? The Klabouterman grinned, a waver in his smile. He waved his cutlass. I'm older than any other ship in THC. I've seen generations rise and fall. Do ye think a single warrior pushing 20 will be enough to defeat a Klabouterman older than Moby? A visible ripple of heated water passed Fukaboshi's lips, the prince not vocalizing any response he could have given. Dutchman felt that shiver once more. The eyes of a predator were making him their target. Vrao, the prince screeched, lunging at the spirit. Dutchman's eyes widened as he raised his cutlass, the blade barely parrying the thrown trident that would have pierced his face. That in itself wouldn't have been horrible. This form wasn't his true body, but the trident whizzed by and stabbed into the railing. The feeling was similar to getting 3 painful shots at the same time, but Dutchman did not have the time to dwell on such esoteric thoughts as Fukaboshi appeared before him in the blink of an eye, water swirling around his fingers and the distinctive sign of fishman karate. That this was the lesser-known merman combat variation meant little. Shit, Dutchman hissed, bringing his hands up in a counter, but he was unprepared for the speed of the attack. A ball of water hit him with the force of a cannon, blasting the consciousness off the deck. His form dissipated as he moved past the railing, as if passing through an invisible door. With his target no longer visible, the rampaging dragon set his sight on the captain. Bahohoho, my apologies, Sir Knight, but you're in my way. Die for the sake of mine and Shirahoshi's love. Bahohoho. Am my prince? Angle, the only soldier left, stuttered, holding back an axe intent on running him through with supernatural force. The fear in his voice caused Vanderdecken to freeze, turning slowly. Fukuboshi's glowing eyes stared at the captain, unblinking. Ah, the pirate swallowed like a mouse cornered by the cat it had been taunting. The teeth Fukuboshi bared parted as if readying to rip a chuck out of Deccan's hide. Be brother-in-law. Why you seem to be doing well, that's. He gurgled, the prince's hand suddenly passing through his bubble to clamp down on his neck. Angle felt the axe in his hands stop struggling as Deccan tried to pry the fingers away. Fukuboshi now the new target to the pirate's uncovered hand. Deccan's 4 legs flailed as they left the deck. Please, he begged, the world growing darker. That's enough of that, Dutchman said, his non-pincer hand gripping the prince's wrist. Suction cups thereupon pulled at the flesh, peeling the fingers away until Deccan fell to the deck, gasping for air. Your fight's with me, boy. Dutchman, Deccan coughed. What is that? What happened to him? The dauntless dragon, copying. 'Tis a power of the royals thought to have been lost generations ago. At the cost of one's lifespan and mind while in use, the user can access all of their power and more. His head exploded, the prince's hand swiping through it like a deformed cannonball. The body wobbled for only a moment before the head reformed on the shoulders. He's just a berserker now, copying. Well, deal with it, Dutchman pulled, yanking the prince back the way they came. Deccan only had a second to breath before his instincts screamed at him, the man throwing himself to the side as his own axe stabbed the deck where he'd been. Don't forget about me, pirate, Angle hissed. We're here to put you down like the dog you are, and I refuse to lose my friends in vain. Now die for the sake of the kingdom's love for Princess Shirahoshi. On the other side of the deck, Fukuboshi wrenched himself free of Dutchman's hold, his brute strength ripping the spirit's arm off. The mad dragon growled as Dutchman retreated, reforming his arm as he did so. The golden eyes narrowed, water swirling around his fingers. Oh hell. Dutchman did not have the time to form his defense fully before the attack came. Liquid with the force of a waterfall poured down on the spirit, his little bubble of protection not extending beyond his feet. The water beat down on the deck around him, Dutchman gritting his teeth through the pain as cracks spiraled outward along his old floorboards. The dauntless dragon brings overwhelming power, but at the cost of the body and mind. Time is now his ultimate enemy. If I can hold out, another downpour beat against Dutchman's defense, and it took all his knowledge to keep his deck intact between onslaughts, though the cracks continued to widen. Damn it, Deccan 3. Ye just had to practice your fishman karate away from me deck, didn't ye? Another attack. Dutchman's water dome. His spectral body remained untouched, but the weakened deck finally gave way, the Klabouterman coughing up some approximation of blood as his feet hit the next floor below. His insides had been filled with air ever since Deccan IX obtained his devil fruit, but that air now escaped through the hole the prince created, water spilling into the ship. The bubbles released held Fukuboshi back just long enough for Dutchman to plan his next move. The prince's tail hit the wood just as Dutchman's coattails disappeared into the wall, the berserker turning his glowing eyes to every area in an attempt to find his target. Another heated breath leaked past his lips, the near-boiling water pulled away as the hallways and rooms continued to flood. Come out, the prince taunted, a bloodthirsty grin revealing his shark teeth. I know you're there. In response, a claw rose from the floor in an approximation of an uppercut. Fukuboshi shifted backward, the spectral chitin whiffing past before retreating back into the ship. A spike of wood shot from the wall to the left, the prince catching it in a hand. It creaked under his strength before dissipating into mist and slipping between his fingers. The prince's eyes narrowed as he growled, his fingers forming droplets distinct even in the water around them. They rocketed forward with a flick of the wrist, the water bullets ripping through wood, but that did not satisfy the crazed fighter. Again and again, his volleys tore into the old ship, Dutchman forming parts of his body where he could in order to negate some of the damage. Pincers, peg legs, cutlasses, and feet tried their best to estimate points of impact and tank the damage just to reform where the structure of their true body could not, but little could stand up to the force the dauntless dragon could make. Dutchman cursed silently as another blast of water blew one of his manifested pincers to bits before puncturing another half-dozen holes through his walls and hull. That he was not meant to sail on the surface or that he had only recently grown used to dry insides was cold comfort as the waters of the deep filled him now. He could feel himself slowing as his captain's powers were forced to fight against more water resistance. Few understood that Vanderdecken IX's powers bestowed a level of kinetic force into the projectile and that the larger the object, the slower it would be overall, and that it was not immune to lesser resistances. Dutchman, however, doubted that Fukuboshi knew or even cared about those details. More importantly, he would only survive for as long as his ship remained ship-shaped, and seaworthy. The fact that he was still around after 9 generations was a testament to his creator's abilities and the care his previous captains had taken. A Klabouterman is the essence and reflection of a ship, the physical made manifest in the metaphysical. As soon as one was no longer recognized as a ship, bearing some exceptions as Going Merry and Moby had proven, Then the spirit would cease to be in the same way that the soul passes on with the death of the body. And right now, his body was taking a beating he couldn't take much more of. "Ye cannot keep this up," Dutchman warned. Fukaboshi's bottom 2 inches of hair a pale blue-gray already with the drain in color steadily crawling upward. The warrior barely reacted as the voice echoed from all around him, the walls and floor vibrating with the sound. "He ain't perfect, but me Captain's a good enough man. He'll treat your sister like a queen." Fukaboshi answered by punching a wall, a splurge of bubbles initially exploding from the new hole before lessening to a slow dribble. Before he could pull his fist back, however, the top and bottom of the hole formed teeth, biting into the meat and tissue of his forearm. He let out an instinctive grunt of pain as Dutchman rematerialized from the wall, dragging the prince through by his now bleeding arm into one of the crew quarters. The fairy's face tentacles rolled up Fukaboshi's appendage, trying to crush the muscles and bones that had caused him so much pain to dust. "This should be my domain, boy," Dutchman growled, his voice coming from the room even with his mouth full. "I am all around ye and ye be burning your own body for a paltry win. Give up and live." The prince closed his eyes and took a deep breath, focusing on the pain cutting through the haze his mind had become with his pseudo-transformation. The blood rushing to his brain began to lessen as some of it seeped into the waters. His golden eyes opened. "I must thank you, Dutchman," Fukaboshi said with that same echoing timbre that mirrored Dutchman's whole speak. He flexed, his muscles snapping the conglomeration's teeth from their roots with brute force. As happened with the rest of his severed parts, the teeth faded before reforming in their proper places, leaving the already healing cuts behind while Dutchman gnashed. "Something came over me, but you have cleared my head." Bloodletting, the spirit realized. "Damn. Indeed. I would say surrender, but that would not be fair to the men you killed. I'm sure you wouldn't do so anyway. You were quite literally born a pirate." "You're right, Prince. The only right answer to this is a fight to the death." Dutchman leapt forward, cutlass cutting through water. Missing his trident, the prince swirled water around his arm and batted the blade aside by the flat. The Klabouterman refused to be deterred by such an action, his pincer coming up assisted by the centrifugal force of the parry. Fukaboshi responded in kind, completing his spin to bring his hand down. King Dragon style. Dragon current. Dutchman jumped, pivoting around the claw to bring his peg leg down in a punishing axe kick. The prince grit his teeth as he was forced to the floor, the start of a resonating headache throbbing from where wood met his skull, but the adrenaline of his dauntless dragon state was already beginning to nullify the feeling. One hand came up, grabbing the fairy's leg, while the other punched. Dutchman's head snapped backward, his consciousness rattled with whiplash like vertigo. Disoriented, he felt water start to flow around him before the merman released his leg, throwing him into and through yet another wall. Fukaboshi panted, one eye squinted as he wrestled with his blurring vision. His semi-physical opponent had vanished again after exiting the new hole in the hull, so he had only a few seconds at most before he returned again. "This is going to hurt," he muttered to himself before tucking himself into a ball and somersaulting, his speed growing with each flick of his tail. King Dragon style. Shark tail rip. "No!" the Klabouterman cried, leaping from the ceiling over the prince. Alas, he was too late as a pulse of sharpened water arced in a vertical circle from the man. The attack cut Dutchman in half twice over, first his humanoid form from head to pelvis, then his ship from port to starboard, which in turn split the spirit at the waist. The manifestation's parts landed on a separate part of the vessel, half on the bow and the other on the stern. From up above, his captain called his name in panic. "Me ship," Dutchman hacked, coughing up spiritual essence. "Why you?" The distance between the parts grew. Dutchman needed only a second to realize the implication, the prince forgotten as he focused all his concentration on what he could do to delay the inevitable. He ground his teeth and the ship itself began to glow an eerie green, the same glow around the humanoid manifestation. Light shifted as Dutchman reworked which parts of his soul resided where. His waist knitted back together, though his left and right sides remained apart. One problem patched for the time being, Dutchman stabbed his sword into the floorboards of one side while his pincer gripped those of the other. He let out a growl of strain as slowly, almost too slowly, his halves pulled to each other like magnets of opposite polarity until they touched. The front half of his ship continued RRED and now almost twice as fast as before. Only Dutchman's willpower dragged his back half along for this painful ride. It was all he could do to keep himself together, a blurred line present as his spirit tried and failed to become whole without his body able to do the same. "I'm sorry." Fukaboshi's words scalded him like boiling water. "I hate ye," Dutchman bit out, a flame that refused to be doused growing in his gut. If this was to be his end, he would make it a memorable one. "Your family, your kingdom, the Poseidon, all of it." "Poseidon?" the prince questioned. "Your legend has shackled me captains for all me existence." The mere idea drove him mad time after time, generation after generation. They slaughtered their own crewmates for their questions and stained me deck red for centuries, all because the royal bloodline. "That is not our fault, isn't it?" Dutchman grinned through the pain. All along, I wanted to save me captains like so many Omi crew before, but there's only one way to do that. Do you know how, Prince? To turn them away from, Yee-ah-ha-ha-ha-ha. Fukaboshi cut himself off as the laugh ripped through the Klabouterman, echoing through the surroundings. He frowned. You think we would give up after so long? Dutchman asked. You think we could? You think anyone on the island would accept that answer? No, Prince Fukaboshi. Piracy be the only path we could ever walk. Then what? The merman demanded, the ship rattling as its personification struggled to keep its parts together. The glow faded for a second before returning brighter. What is your answer to your impossible question? What justifications do you have for killing my men like barnacles? The only answer is death and loss. That pulled Fukaboshi up short, his eyes widening. Only the death of the royal family could free the Deccan line. Only the forever loss of Poseidon could end the mad obsession. And only the destruction of Fishman Island as it is now could erase the memory of the sins of the past and allow the Deccans of the future to live in peace. What is Poseidon? The prince questioned again. Again, Dutchman ignored him. Long as your father, your brothers, your sister, and ye survive, Captain Deccan and his children will chase after ye. Long as you're around, I'll need to watch me captains chase the impossible and die trying. I refuse. That's why, Prince Fukaboshi, I'd rather die and take even one of ye with me than watch another Deccan fall to the curse of your legacy. And once you're gone, me bow will go on. Death befall ye and the princess. I pray to Calypso. Good riddance. Wood ground against wood as Dutchman heaved, boards cracking and splintering. The prince braced as the battlefield imploded. Coby panted, the ground around him littered with bodies and gashes. His muscles ached, dried blood drawing lines down his human form from the few cuts and bullet holes the waves of pirates had managed to nick him with. Kaku stood at his back, his fellow human form zoned swordsman equally winded but unable to complain. Despite the number of fallen, still more fishmen eyed them while screams and explosions echoed through the air. It's like they never end, Coby grunted, rolling his shoulders. I think it's time we joined the battle in the sky for a change of pace and leave these guys to Luffy and the others. What do you say we give them one more hit and go, Wind? The ex-agent nodded, sheathing his swords before crouching. Brown spots grew over his yellowing skin while, beside him, Coby shifted into his drill mode. He leapt, diving into the ground with little resistance as Kaku began to spin, swinging his neck to build momentum. Let's get him while they're separated, a pirate yelled, the ring collapsing as the group rushed inward. I hope you're ready to die, human. Kaku paid them little mind as he continued to move faster, trusting that Coby would do something about their plan. He didn't need to wait long before the first charging pirate stepped on a section of ground that gave way beneath him. He cried out in pain as his ankle snapped. His top trying to keep the momentum his leg could no longer support. Like a breaking wave, the man fell over. He was only the first as another of his crewmates met the same fate, a distinct circle of interrupted attackers forming a speed bump for those behind. Said second wave hit an area much like the first, only this one was more of a spiral slowly closing in toward the ungulate nearing the end of his preparations. An unannounced sky slicer ripped through the remaining charging force, blasting them outward. Kaku wavered, trying to give his inner ears time to stop protesting as Coby leapt from the ground while offering a fist. Kaku grinned, bumping it with his own hoof as the two shrunk back into their original forms. Moonwalk, the Rosset shouted, both fighters kicking off the ground and into the air. Concass, Sanji yelled, Ace cheering in his arms as the chef's steel-toed shoes crunched against the skull of another bubble-suspended pirate. The force catapulted the merman into the ground below, but Sanji could not celebrate the victory as yet another spear aimed for his side. Deer, Ace supplied, pointing out an obvious threat, and deer and right deer. That last one had gone unnoticed, the blonde silently thanking the child against his chest as he backflipped over the incoming points. A glaring weakness and an additional weight the child may be, but he made up for it every now and then by covering what situational awareness his presence removed. Get back here, you coward, one of the mermen demanded. Give us the boy. 64 caliber Phoenix, a half-dozen flying slashes cut into the small band, Kaku and Coby appearing at either side of the chef as they took a moment to watch their opponents fall. Ace grinned, waving. Hi, Uncle Coby, hi, Kaku, hi, Ace, the younger Zone responded. Sanji, what's the status up here? These morons call themselves the Skyfish Division. He gestured to where Mary danced with a pair of nets and Nami rode Billy, both beating back against the seemingly endless wave. We've got more maneuverability with Billy and Skywalk. You're the only one that calls it that, but I think it's clear they've got numbers. I want to go see Mommy, Ace demanded, wiggling in Sanji's hold. I'm not done teaching you to be a gentleman, the chef protested even as Coby took the young child from him. Wind, why don't you stay here with Sanji? Coby suggested. I'll take Ace to Nami and join Mary over there. Again, Kaku nodded before Coby kicked, the force carrying him and the toddler over the battlefield. The land below was a mess of action and quiet pockets. Luffy was a whirlwind of fists and feet, blowing fishmen away like pollen in the wind. Grace and Amy fought together, the former bringing back the past for the latter as she created explosions to carry Amy away from imminent danger or position her for optimal meteoric impact. Chopper stuck out of a Brachiosaurus-themed tank, calling out enemy positions while the person inside, Frankie presumably, worked the cannon. Jin and the princes stayed by Sunny, defending her immobile form even as the ship offered her own 2 cents with all the hidden mechanisms Frankie and Galila had loaded her with. Was that a flamethrower? Yes, that was an omnidirectional flamethrower. Why didn't Frankie ever mention he gave their ship an omnidirectional flamethrower? Brooke seemed to be holding a concert for a small band, the dancing group shooting at their own crewmates with unfocused eyes whilst the skeleton played behind them. Zoro and Hyuzu raced in an arc around Robin, the woman's limbs spreading over the area like deadly plants. On the other side, Usopp spread literal deadly plants in his own little jungle. Pirates hanging from the tops of bamboo shoots or trapped in the salivating mouths of gigantic Venus flytraps. If the lights in the sniper's eyes were any indication, he really wanted to be in the tank and away from more immediate danger. Wah, oh, Coby. Nami grinner their recent combination attack to come to a hover alongside him. She waved her perfect clean attack forward as Billy stopped, launching a cloud she'd been dragging into an opaque tornado that ripped through a division of spearbearers like cattle. I see you've got ace, thanks. Mommy. The swordsman handed the boy over, the young mother settling him in the saddle before her in short order. He twisted his body as best he could, giving her a hug to the waist. Ace, Nami cooed. Do you want to see mommy make some cool atmospheric phenomena? We'll electrically stimulate the water vapor of mommy's stratus cumulonimbus, and what will that do, Ace? The clouds'll go zap, and if we force a cold front into warm air? They'll chase each other and go whoosh. Twisty. That's right, Ace, Nami gushed. You're so smart. You're just as bad as Robin, Coby muttered as Nami rattled off more weather-based jargon to her not even 2-year-old son. His left arm rose, batting away the merman that tried to silently stab him before the blade moved to pop the man's bubble. Well, we'll deal with that between life-threatening situations. I'm gonna go check on Mary. Bye, Uncle Coby, have fun, Ace waved as Coby and Billy went separate ways. The skies were more or less clear in a straight path toward the mid-air Klabouterman supporting herself in the same way as the Zone, the ex-agent, and the chef. Rope danced around her at her beck and call, a surprisingly deep laugh rumbling from her throat. Come get me, you wimps, Mary laughed, cracking a merman across the face with rope like a whip before wrapping him in a net that dragged him down. She spun, launching a tempest kick through the air toward a charging group that scattered to avoid the slash. And you all call yourselves the Skyfish Division? Well, I guess it doesn't mean much when the Skyfish of Skypa are nothing but hot air balloons without any real bite. Bahahaha. Yeah, looks like she doesn't need any help, Coby commented, sticking around anyway to watch and catch his breath. Look what we have here, one of the mermen surrounding Mary called, a posse of nearly 20 gathering in a semicircle arrayed around the pirate. Did you know there's something even lower than a human? A wannabe human? This ship thinks it's better to walk on land than float in the ocean, and it must have eaten a devil fruit just to make believe. Bro, I don't think that's how it works, another new fishman pirate commented. Not here in this version of reality. I mean, Moby can still swim. Come on, my brothers, let's show this fake human the power of merman. The egotistical merman charged, only 2 out of the other 20 following his lead. Mary blinked before pulling out a handful of marble-sized cannonballs. Though they were too small to fit inside of any conventional cannon, the metallurgy of their composition was the same, and that was enough for her, fairy magic, as Polly sometimes called it. Taking inspiration from Grace, the balls revolved around her, spinning too fast for the merman to notice as they approached. Die, you ghost, he stabbed, the point of his spear passing through Mary's stomach as she destabilized. She grinned at him and grasped the weapon, pushing it out without even a hole left behind. One of her metal marbles snapped the shaft of his spear while another 2 broke the noses of his companions. What? You can't kill a ghost, silly, Mary teased, throwing the spearhead over her shoulder. That's the thing about Klaboutermans. We're like music. You can't touch us, you metal marbles pushed the merman forward, Mary's small hand grabbing him by the face before angling herself above him. But we can touch you. She kicked, the 2 descending with increasing speed. His cries for forgiveness and mercy vanished in the wind whistling through their ears. He landed first, his body forming a crater with Mary's iron body enhanced form digging him deeper. Damn it, Mary. Amy cursed, smacking a pirate with her umbrella hard enough to launch him into the far wall. That's my move you just stole. Pirate, the ship girl sang, leaving the twitching tail of the merman stuck in the earth. Anyway, gotta go. More deluded morons to punch. So you've finally come back down to earth, a voice said, both women turning to see a teal-green-skinned fish man with a large forehead. We meet again, Klabouterman. Fore, Mary said, and my name is Mary. I guess you want to finish what we started back at the palace. I do. What about those guys? Mary gestured upward to the Skyfish division eyeing her from above. Fore waved them off, barely noticing as Coby attacked them. They won't bother us. I might not be one of Captain Hody's most trusted, but I am strong enough for Sir Zio to trust me with some energy steroids. Not the new kind they have, but someone's got to use the old ones. He raised his palm, showing off the red and black checkered pills many had used back at the palace. You don't mind, do you? You're the closest thing I've got to a rival and I want to beat you fair and square. I can respect that, Mary grinned, rope spilling from her sleeves. Use every advantage you have, I know I will. Fore nodded, downing the pills in one swallow. He grunted, 3 heartbeats making him bulk up until he was a couple inches taller and wider than before with now glowing red eyes. He cracked his neck as the power surged through him. Let's go. Both contenders blurred forward, forehead and horns meeting in a clash that caused gusts of air pressure, matching grins present on their lips. Mary, the weightless woman fretted, but she could tell there was no stopping the ship-turned girl at this point. She was too much like Luffy with her current mindset. Amy turned as another group came forward, each of these fighters carrying a 6-foot black shield ringed with spikes. Great, more of you. Hello from the Iron Shell division, their leader called. You're pretty tough for a female human, but I bet your insides are just as squishy as anyone else's. We'll punch right through and finish you off with our spiked shields. I see, Amy grinned, sauntering forward with a sway in her hips. You boys think you've got what it takes to get inside me? We will. The division raised their shields and charged, aiming to stab the woman they'd seen falling from the sky multiple times without a scratch to show for it. You're either pretty brave or really stupid, Amy said, taking a deep breath as the mass in her fist increased disproportionately to the rest of her body, save the muscles and skeletal structures holding her up. Lines of black smoke wisped into existence around her knuckles, the blonde readying as they approached. Too bad you're messing with a meteor, Master Fist. She punched the ground, the force causing a localized earthquake as the stone gave way below her. Her mass reduced as she jumped toward them in their time of panic, fists, legs, and her umbrella breaking bones while they still could not recover their footing. Come get some, a batfish fishman yelled, his powerful legs carrying his ugly mug over the rough terrain with little problem. Amy's nose wrinkled as he drew closer, the smell of rotting carcass invading her senses from a proboscis hanging between his eyes. Nausea washed over her as the pirate raised his spiked defense for pure offense. Die, you human bitch. Blue arrow. The projectile nailed the batfish in the shoulder, its structure breaking down as its composition flowed into his veins. The man's eyes grew teary as he lowered the shield, letting it fall to the ground. I'm so sorry, miss, he sniffed, his proboscis returning into his face to cut off the smell. His tears fell. Mama would be so ashamed to see me attacking an unarmed woman. Attacking anyone, actually. I've always been a problem child, he broke down, curling into a fetal position as he wept, muttering about not having lived up to his mother's expectations. Thanks, Grace, Amy yelled, kicking the man to send him into blissful unconsciousness. Her sister answered, the redhead returning to her own battlefield. The ground looked like a toddler's preschool project, splotches of color everywhere with periodic lumps where some unfortunate fishman had been unable to get away from a wave of paint. It's time to cave that pretty face of yours, a large fishman announced, his speed belying his apparent size as he appeared over Grace with his club, a blunt instrument as tall as she was, already in motion above her. The chem woman reacted on instinct, her hand coming together to form a swirling ball of purple gas between her palms. Go to hell, human. Neon argon. Gas ground against solid, the density of the two battling for supremacy. Grace grit her teeth as the force nearly pushed her to a knee before the grinding grew louder. The fishman pulled back in surprise, a rough orb now missing from his club. What the h, your fear is delicious, the artist said, the ball of gas breaking in two as she split it into her pair of guitar. One extended as she swung it, the blade of solidified argon catching and slicing the club where its integrity had been weakened. Its weighted end clunked against the ground. The man took a step back. Ah, what's wrong? Is the big, strong fishman scared of a little human girl? Don't make fun of me. He threw his ruined weapon away and bore down on the artist, his superior height making him tower over her. Grace didn't flinch, shoving her hand forward as a wave of brown-black splashed against him. He froze, slowly looking down at the paint that now dripped down his front. He'd seen the effects on others and worried what this one could do. His rage made him fall right into her trap. She grinned. Colors trap. Art is an explosion. Oh, son of a fish. Grace snapped, blasting the fishman across the way. As fire burned his front, his flight was interrupted by the strike of a bolt of lightning. His momentum vanished in a moment, the charred fishman landing on his face. Like cockroaches, Lotto ya, Jin yelled, trying to hide his own panting. He'd gone all out with his first few attacks after Sunny's entrance, hoping that everyone's overwhelming force would scare them into surrender. That plan didn't pan out and, with his electric stores beginning to run low, it appeared the smaller groups of new fishmen were beginning to wise up with who they fought. So you're the one they call the Electric Devil? A voice said, Jin backhanding his latest foe with his tonfa before turning to the newest threat. Two identical pirates stood amongst their downed companions. They were male with elongated, brown skin interspersed with highlights of yellow, and their underbites showed off razor teeth. That bitch and her bird held us back in the palace, but we can't settle that score while she's flying around up there. So we'll take our pound of flesh from you instead, the other brother grinned. We're the Denki twins, first and second. Your names are first and second, Jin blinked. That's us, the first brother to speak answered. I'm the older brother, second. And I'm the younger brother, first. That's gonna to be a headache soon, the logia grumbled. So what, y'all come here to steal some glory from my head or something? You could say that, second responded. There aren't many electric eel fishmen among us and we're the best of them. That makes us uniquely suited to taking you down. Y'all really think some electric resistance'll be enough to beat me? Jin laughed. Come and be cleansed, oh your hubris. Fear not, for your sins are washed clean in humility o defeat. Jin flashed forward, catching the twins off guard if their surprise was any indication. First managed to react before his brother, the younger trying to pull the older away, but he wasn't as fast as the lightning man. Both of Jin's tonfa landed glancing blows into second's chest, the fishman hacking up blood. Jin's grin widened for only a moment before a sharp pain pierced his shoulder. What were you saying about hubris? Second asked through a bloodied smile, the man pulling a thin rapier more of an oversized needle from the logia's shoulder. See prism stone, the human gasped. That's right, first nodded, pulling out a matching weapon. We knew we were going to take you on, so we prepared for it with these stocks. Come meet your end, human, ha, Hyuzu breathed, gashes carved into the ground around him. His swords hovered around his sides, ready to move at the slightest provocation as the merman tried to catch his breath. Zoro, in contrast, grinned at him through Wado Ichimonji, only a light sheen over his skin. Hyuzu's shirt was soaked through with sweat. He gritted his teeth. As I thought, you really aren't treating me like a real threat. You're more of a threat than the rest of your group, Zoro shrugged. Had you still thought how you did before, I would have only used Kitetsu, and that's all I would have needed. I see, so I'm strong enough to warrant all three of your swords. What an honor. Hyuzu raised his swords, their blades dripping with his self-secreted toxin. One way or another, the loser of this battle will no longer be a swordsman. Should you win, my blades are yours. I would not deserve them. Zoro smirked. If that's the case, then the same to you. I'm sure that if you killed me, you'd earn the loyalty of Wado, Kitetsu, and Shisui anyway. And the names of yours? Hishokusha and Imono. Come for them, human. Fangs of the hunter. Tiger trap. Hyuzu's swords divided, half coming down and the other half rising, so each group had its own collision course with the other somewhere in the middle where Zoro stood. The human, understandably not wanting to be cut to ribbons, moved his own swords to counter. The impacts between blades produced a concussive force that blew both fighters backward, Hyuzu completing a whole backflip before catching himself with his tentacles. Neither fighter waited for the other to move, the merman already scurrying to the side as Zoro completed a trio of flying slashes that pulverized the ground where he'd been standing. Hishokusha and Imono redirected those that came later as the octopus charged the human. He spun into a whirlwind, all 8 of his swords at varying heights and distances to maximize his chances of landing a blow on his foe. Returning hunt. Unable to jump or dodge the attack, Zoro tanked the blow. Metal screeched against metal as 11 swords scraped and sparked. Zoro's feet carved trenches into the dirt as the force pushed him back, but the Verde focused solely on the minor adjustments he needed in his swordsmanship to avoid being stabbed. Hyuzu began to slow after several seconds, allowing the Straw Hat Pirate to toss him away before giving chase. Onigiri. The merman jumped, letting the force of Zoro's counter blast him backward without the resistance that could result in something slipping, which would result in a sword or 3 to the gut. As it was, the blow only sent him away, putting distance between the two fighters once more. Die, Pirate Hunter. A trio of fishmen roared, interposing themselves between the two dueling swordsmen. Get out of our fight, human and merman shouted, their combined weaponry cutting through the foolish pirates. Honestly, Robin sighed to herself as the two swordsmen met in a flurry of blades again, their footing only slightly hampered by the film of blood running over the cobblestones below. One would think such a bout would become repetitive, but I suppose when each revolution carries just as much threat as the last, only as spectators feel unsatisfied by the reiteration. She closed her fists, breaking a pirate's back without a care before tossing his groaning body over her shoulder with the assistance of 6 arms. What kind of powers are those? A fishman hissed, flinching as Robin turned an eye-covered arm in his direction while her primary pair still watched the duel. You're a monster. Oh dear, that's not very nice, the archaeologist cooed, now turning to eye the one who had tossed such an accusation since Zoro and Hyuzu has somehow found their way to the other side of the plaza in seconds. Flattering, too, but I'm certain that was not your intention and I'm afraid I don't qualify for such a title on our crew. This war of yours grows dull. I believe the time has come to force your stronger pieces to the board, and for that, we must make room. So sorry. Are you mocking me? I'll rip your limbs off? So barbaric. The pirate and his friends charged, swords drawn to finish off the freakish human woman. Robin crossed her arms, seemingly unconcerned of the danger approaching. Mil fluer gigantesco manos, stomp. Behind the woman bloomed a massive pair of slender legs, slowing the advancing pirates to an awestruck stop. They swallowed, most in fear. Though one looked torn between two conflicting feelings, all at once, the legs descended to decimate the battlefield. The ground shook with each step of Robin's attack, but this difficulty only seemed to improve the moods of a certain pair of fighters. Red eyes stared into black as the parrotfish man Fore and the clabouterman Mary battled for dominance. You're pretty good, Mary admitted, grinding her horns against the fishman. They sunk slightly into his bulbous forehead, negating their momentum before it could reach his brain and cause any definitive damage. Mary took that to mean she'd just need to try harder. You're not so bad yourself, he grinned. Or, in actuality, he made the closest approximation of a grin that he could with his beak, but his eyes told the story in the way his mouth could not. You're at the same level as back in the palace. And you've traded maneuverability in the water for brute strength. Fore punched, his fist meeting Mary's crossed arms and blasting her away. She kicked, several moonwalks being needed to counter her backward momentum before she began making headway. She moved upward, rising over her opponent before disappearing into a shave, fleet barrage. The clabouterman multiplied, her form blurring into existence in seemingly multiple places at different angles. Fore reacted as quickly as he could, but he only blocked 3 attacks before Mary's horns found purchase on the back of his left knee. His supporting limb dropped, opening his right side to another attack. He waist twisted with the force of a blow pushing his shoulder the opposite direction he wanted it to go. Damn, he growled before a rounded horn slammed into his cheek. Those aforementioned horns slammed into his ribs with enough force that he was sure only the energy steroids prevented injury. Even so, the hit still knocked the wind out of him. His jaw clenched, the man tensing before throwing himself to the side. Mary passed through the air where he'd been before headbutting the ground in a spray of pebbles. Fore pivoted, driving one foot into the clabouterman's gut. Mary hacked, her eyes widening as the fishman punted her like a small, mammalian pest. Bile rose against her tongue as her spectral body compressed with the force before she ragdolled, rolling over the ground as it absorbed her kinetic energy bit by bit. She spat red, said spit disintegrating into naught but energy as it was separated from the main aspect of her spirit, leaving nothing behind. Ow, she groaned, catching sight of Fore swallowing another few pills as he advanced on her, a malicious gleam burning in his red eyes. Mary forced herself to her knees, one arm around her abused stomach. Just because I'm a manifested spirit does not mean I can't feel pain, you bastard. I've heard tales about your kind, clabouterman, Fore said, his body reacting to the increased dose of chemicals in his system as his countenance changed. He tilted his head, quite literally looking down on the young pseudo-human. We've gotten a few through here in the past couple of years, and we've learned some things. For instance, did you know that your essence, like blood, is limited? He blurred forward, far faster than he had been before. In the blink of an eye, Mary felt his arms grabbing her shoulder and forearm before a great ripping sound and a scream reached her ears. It took her a second to recognize the voice as her own and another for the phantom pain to hit. Holy shit. The spirit screamed, instincts kicking her off of and away from the being that caused her such pain. She yes on the man who laughed, her own now slowly disintegrating arm still in his grip. Her remaining hand clutched at the jagged stump where her elbow had been, crimson essence already slowing its flow and beginning to reform what had been lost. What the hell? I suppose you could say I disarmed you? He chuckled, one eyelid twitching uncontrollably. He squeezed, the torn limb powdering in his grip. Mary's eyes narrowed as she re-evaluated the fight. Fore was suddenly taking this much more seriously than he had been a moment ago, so the energy steroids must have some compounding, cognitive effect on the user that either increased aggression or decreased empathy. Or both. In other news, her elbow had reformed but it would take another minute or so before the rest of her arm regrew. Good thing she had her legs. Tempest kick. Mary yelled, the arc of compressed air cutting through the distance between them. Fore growled, trying to catch the attack with a hand and only receiving a split palm for his lack of effort. His eyes narrowed as the drugs in his blood clotted the opening while a swarm of tempest kicks began raining down on him. The chemicals he'd imbibed made his body denser, so the downpour of cutting winds only served to cover him in long, superfluous wounds that bled more than hurt. He grinned, knowing most of those would scar and look pretty badass. Assuming he survived the day, of course. Ha! He laughed, digging his fingers into the ground and tearing up a slab of rock for a shield. He spun once before flinging the chunk at his airborne foe. Understandably, Mary dodged, the piece of ground heavily landing somewhere else with some impact on the battle that Fore didn't care about. Come at me, clabouterman, show me your power. And this is why you should never do drugs, kids, Mary muttered, more to herself than anything. Fine. You wanted to take this up a notch. 4. So I guess I just have to knock you back down a peg. She charged, propelling herself through the air with each moonwalk kick, but she refused to move in a straight line. Doing so would have resulted in another hurled piece of earth, so her advance resembled the path of a balloon losing its air more than anything. But this served to confuse her opponent, making targeting where she would be next to impossible for the fishman. He had no way to predict what her next move would be until she was right on top of him, halfway through a flip with one leg extended, air compressing around her heel, falling axe. 4 raised his arms to block, his wrists catching Mary's ankle in a sudden stop. This only increased the force of the air her leg had been directing, a personal variation of the tempest kick she'd been working on with Kaku releasing itself into the parrotfish's unguarded shoulder. Blood flew as the axe-like gust dropped down his front, carving his shirt apart. Mary flipped away, landing on the ground once more as she took in the results of her labor. That hurt, Fore said, his arm with the uninjured shoulder ripping the ruined remains of his top off. Isn't to that point of a fight? Mary inquired. To hurt each other? I mean you did rip my arm off. She gestured to her stump, now healed nearly to her wrist. That wasn't very nice of you. You're trying to distract me. You want to waste time until you have your hand back. Got it in one. His eyes narrowed. You admitted that far too easily. Did I? Mary grinned. I guess that's because I don't even need it. Reading art. Starboard bound. Bah ha ha ha. Mary laughed, rope pouring from every open hole in her clothing, those being the holes for her legs, arms, and head, so the multitude of rope took on a vaguely star-shaped shape. It solidified into a more defined star for only a moment before all 5 of the rope tentacles shot toward her foe. Fore spat a cure and flung himself to the side, rolling over his good shoulder as the woven weapons bounced against the ground. The Klabouterman controlling them gestured with her lone hand, the rope turning on her command to chase him. He would have none of that. Turning on a dime, not that dimes existed in this world, before slamming his foot into the earth. Another rounded slab of the stuff rose, pivoting around the hinge of his foot, before his hand caught it. The lengths of rope smashed into it before he pushed, planting the slab back where it had been but now with the ends of the rope firmly trapped underneath. You aren't the only one with a few tricks up your sleeves, literal or not. Fore shot forward, appearing before Mary with his fist already cocked back. She tried to pull away, but her ropes grew taut with their ends trapped as they were. 10,000 brick fist. The rope frayed and snapped, the noise a sharp crack in the muted gurgle of pain that was meant to be a scream. Crimson essence flew from Mary's mouth as the fishman's fist buried itself into her gut and out the other side. Oh ow, she managed, her voice near a whisper. Fore brought her close, his glowing eyes staring into hers. Blood-like essence ran from the corners of her mouth and, though her vital organs were, contrary to the name, not so vital, that didn't mean being impaled was ineffective or not damaging. What happened to all that boasting from before? Weren't you prepared for someone trained in fishman karate? Mary whispered something, her mouth barely moving. The parrotfish leaned in. What was that? I said, Mary coughed, just a little louder, cannonball barrage. A flurry of tiny cannonballs launched themselves from Mary's pockets, ripping through the cloth before impacting the fishman. He gasped as they carried him backwards, pulling his fist free from the new hole in Mary's stomach, working in tandem to achieve the vision of the ship girl. The miniature spheres lifted Fore off the ground before pivoting and driving him back first into the earth. Cobble and pebble alike crunched as the force drove him into a humanoid-shaped crater. He, like Mary, spat red, but his did not dissipate into the air. Damn, the girl hissed, her 1.5 hands clutching her abdomen as she curled inward and flopped over. Her life essence continued to flow from within her, the pain making thinking far more difficult than it needed to be. Damn, shit, ow. Fore offered, the pellet that had been pressing on his lungs lightening somewhat. Come on, Mary, the Klabouterman muttered to herself, her form starting to waver. Stay conscious, Mary. Like her severed parts before, Mary's body wavered before turning to particles of dust and further vanishing into the heart on her choker. Her clothing crumpled to the ground, empty. She hoped Fore wasn't looking to see her greatest weakness as her soul gathered. Once she was sure she would be whole without the rather glaring hole, her spirit poured from the heart and into the material plane once more, though distinctly less dense than before, she noted. It turned out having your arm ripped away and most of your innards blown into non-specific spectral energy really takes the weight off. Oh, and Fore was getting back on his feet. Can't you just stay down? Mary complained. Ha! A puff of steam came from his beak, the man wobbling somewhat. Half a dozen punctures oozed blood over his form and the blow had reopened the tempest axe kick cut Mary had put in his shoulder. He could feel the steroids draining from his system and into the pool of red forming at his feet. Course not, you didn't. I'm a pirate. Being a hypocrite sometimes is part of the job description. I guess. He coughed, spitting up a glob of red. He winced, digging a cannonball pellet out of his side. I don't have anything left. It's like a sugar crash. Mary didn't respond. It wouldn't be sporting to lie and say she was on her last leg when she wasn't. Sure, she felt queasy from the new and empty stomach, but the pain was all gone and she had both her hand and all her organs back after Romani festing. The only sign of her previous injuries was the hole in her shirt, that expally button. Hey, I know when I'm beat, Fore sighed. He tried to take a step, only for his leg to give out. He crumpled like wet sand, the red glow in his eyes draining away as they shut. He smiled. I guess you win this round. Mary blinked. Wait, that's it? She demanded. Come on, I was expecting some big, final, ultimate move or something. Fore did not respond, though the reason for his silence was unconsciousness rather than disrespect. Feeling distinctly dissatisfied with how the fight ended, Mary turned to the rest of the fighting around her only for the ground to rumble. A shadow rose over the battlefield, attracting the girl's attention to the hulking, orange mass of tentacles rising over the side. Oh, it's Sarum, she commented, said Cephalopod roaring. Her eyes widened. Oh damn it, it's Sarum. He's probably pissed at us. Minutes before, Jin flashed forward, catching the twins off guard if their surprise was any indication. First managed to react before his brother, the younger trying to pull the older away, but he wasn't as fast as the lightning man. Both of Jin's tonfa landed glancing blows into Second's chest, the fishman hacking up blood. Jin's grin widened for only a moment before a sharp pain pierced his shoulder. What were you saying about hubris? Second asked through a bloodied smile, the man pulling a thin rapier, more of an oversized needle, from the logia's shoulder. See prism stone, the human gasped. That's right, First nodded, pulling out a matching weapon. We knew we were going to take you on, so we prepared for it. Come meet your end, human. Shit. Jin grit his teeth through the pain, flashing backwards to put distance between himself and his two enemies. The adrenaline in his system turned the signals from his newest injury into only a dull throb, the kind which he'd almost forgotten the feeling of. This was no simple bruise. It's been a while since one of those stuck around. Then it's time to make up for the past, First laughed, charging forward with his rapier trailing behind. The older brother mirrored the younger. They split, trailing different directions as is the common practice in 2-on-1 combat, while their free hands tossed a pair of old energy steroids into their mouths. This ought to be a good show, Rum commented. Jin could hear his parasite's metaphysical smirk widen. If only you had the mantra of the mind. Jin directed his internal electrical impulses to slow his heartbeat. He closed his eyes, allowing his hearing and his sixth sense of ambient electricity to keep track of his foes. As Sister Artemis had always said, if you cannot track all your targets with sight, then it is only a distraction. This technique of his was a poor substitute for observation hockey, but it would do, he grinned. The tongue may lie and the eyes may fail, but the world is of many senses, and each tells their own truth. That truth is yours to find. And he's gone theological. Second was the first to attack, the older twin coming in on his left. Jin flowed like water, his tonfa rising to parry the coming stab. He did not stop there, spinning around to slam the ball of his other weapon into the electric eel's side. There was no time to savor Second's grunt of pain or his tumble as the other twin moved in for a pincer maneuver. Jin dropped, rolling onto his back before twisting into a low sweep. A move Brother Apollo favored in his weaponless, back break dance, fighting style. First tumbled, flailing, as Jin flowed with the momentum into a headstand and, from there, into a handstand jump onto his feet. He hopped over a swing of the sea prism stone weapon and kicked First away. I need ta called council, the monk pirate mused, schadenfreude for once making him and Rum of similar mind while they watched the twins wallow on the ground. I need ta thank him again fair all trainin'. I am still of mixed opinion about taking up that newbie's choice of fighting style as an additive, Rum offered. Though effective and powerful, it makes one's clothing soiled with all the groundwork away from the cumulorigalis. How is one meant to keep a suit clean if you're rolling around in the dust like a worm? I don't wear a suit, but I will, and you are giving our body. My body. Our body poor muscle memory. Look, First, Second said, wiping blood from the edge of his lips. The human's gone mad talking to no one. Indeed, Second, First agreed. Though he knew he was a little mad already with those stupid clothes. Who fights in a long dress? Across the plaza, Amy sneezed, just missing a fishman's body with her 15,000 kilogram press to flatten his arm. She blinked as he screamed. Whoops. Excuse me, let's try that again. As I've been saying, Rum's voice sounded smug. Shut up, all o' you, Jin huffed. First, it's a robe, not a dress. Okay, First muttered. Second, I'm not talking to myself, but it would take far too long to explain that to you. Why would I care? Second asked. And third, I outranked both o' you in every physical why, even with this hole in my shoulder, so you're just delaying the inevitable at this point. Oh, First realized. You weren't talking to us. Well, you were, but not to us individually. You were making a list of points. I thought it was weird that you answered us since most people don't. That was as far as he got before a gold inkized ball of iron bashed in his snout. He recovered quickly, swinging his arms around as he tried not to fall. By luck or some karmic comeuppance in response to Jin's ego, first managed to grab the shaft of his needle sword on the other side of the logia as Jin turned. The human remained standing, but the fishman's fall pulled the sea prism stone weapon against his gut, almost instantly sapping his energy. Encumbered by this, the electric devil could not react as Second ran over with an attempt to stab him in the abdomen. This is your end, human. A similar fear of death flashed through the dual minds in Jin's head and, for a moment, the two became one. Time slowed and reality cleared as Second approached. Jin could see the needle sword's path, the arc Second intended for it that would skewer one of his kidneys. Neither he nor Rum would allow that to happen. They would not die here. Dropping his tonfa, Jin's hands moved. The human grabbed First's fists so he could not let go while his head snapped backward in a reverse headbutt. The electric eel cried out as his already broken nose was subjected to more abuse. With his captor's sense of balance compromised, Jin raised his legs. Second's sword, already in motion, could not stop as it pierced Jin's shin, the point going all the way through and into his calf behind like some poorly imitated shish kebab. The centrifugal force ripped the sword from Second's grip as his target and brother tumbled to the cobblestone in a heap of limbs. Jin landed a first, knocking the wind from his lungs while breaking his hold on his own blade. The human rolled, taking both swords with him. His good leg kicked out, knocking Second's knee from under him. All parties involved took a moment to recover themselves. That didn't go as planned. Second groaned. First muttered something in response through his bloodied snout. Across the way, Jin grit his teeth, slowly pulling the rapier from his leg. Shit, the human hissed as his mind and Rum's separated again. All that warning and I still fell into that invincible logia mindset. This is embarrassing. Do not expect that form of resonance often, Jin-kun, his other voice warned. We are of radically different ideologies. Such resonances will be few and far between. Ignoring him while making a mental note to ask about whatever resonance entailed, Jin tossed the sea prism stone rapiers behind him and focused. Electricity from the surroundings buzzed, sinking into his skin where his injuries showed. The flesh there sparked, threads of lightning forming to knit the wounds together, leaving scars behind. I hate that stone, Jin said, looking up to find the twins' Iktanfa. Oh, come on. Sorry, electric devil, Second laughed. Looks like this is your. And the slab of rock fell, crushing him beneath its bulk. Jin and First stared at the boulder, mouths agog. They blinked. Big bro, First screamed, running to the boulder. One arm remained unsquished, reaching in the vague direction of the voice. The younger twin swung the tonfa in his hand, beating it against the rock but only managing flakes and cobbles for his trouble. Hey, Jin chuckled. That's convenient for me. Need some help? Not from a human, the remaining fishman responded, but the venom his words had was missing. Another slam of the tonfa yielded a similar lack of results as before. It's gonna be okay. Second, I'll get you out. Not at that rate. You shut up. A human wouldn't help a fishman, we all know that. Jin shook his head, raising his arms in the universal sign of placation. Listen, ya need my help right now if and ya wanna save your brother. I'll help, but ya gotta promise you both'll bow out, fight. That sound reasonable? But Captain Hody, he won't be a problem by and hour. First wavered for only a moment before brotherly concern won out over hateful, specist ideology. Fine, please, save my brother. Alright, give me my tonfa. The human strode forward, taking his weapon back from the twin. A single flick of the wrist sent the weighted weapon spinning, kicking up a breeze as he built up its speed. Sparks sparked as an electric charge began to permeate the air. First watched, awed. Ha! Jin gave a cry, swinging his weapon. The weighted ball struck the boulder with a thunderclap, his electric current running through the golden trims on the tonfa. The rock exploded as if struck by lightning, charred rubble and burnt stone flying away to reveal the bruised form of the older twin. Second, First yelled, rushing past the human to cradle his sibling. Injured as he was still breathing. The twin that had not had the misfortune of random flying boulder turned to Jin. Thank you. We'll keep our promise. I'll even give you a shock if you want. We are electric eels, after all. Once Hody's gone, maybe you two should consider joining the Ryugu army, the Logia suggested, retrieving his other weapon before tucking both in his hands into his sleeves. The image of a pious monk stood opposed to the terrifying warrior he'd been only moments before. You both can atone for your crimes through service. Unless y'all got other trained skills than fightin'. We'll think about it. A sudden rumbling sent the fighters off balance, the brothers tossed to the earth. Jin turned as a roar of rage echoed over the battle. He turned, a massive octopus slithering over the edge of the cliff and into the plaza. Oh, it's just Sarum, he said. You know the Kraken? First questioned. We ran into him on our way in. Why's he here? Captain Hody's forcing him to help by threatening his brother at the North Pole. That, Jin blinked. I think that's one of the stupidest things I've heard in this fight so far. Dutchman, Vander Decken Ajax yelled, the green glow of his bisected ship fading slowly. Pieces of driftwood tore themselves from where something had crashed both halves of the aged boat together, peeling off into the swirling waters around until they were lost in the darkness one by one. Somewhere out there was Angle the soldier from when Decken threw him overboard with a burst of adrenaline-fueled strength. That was much less of a concern to the legacy pirate than the results of the battle before him. A small light in the distance before the ship remained unnoticed, behind Decken's back as it was. Dutchman, what happened? Answer me. No answer came as the ship's parts groaned and creaked, lodged together as they were. The sickly light coming from the waterlogged wood flickered weakly, nearly reminiscent of the eyelids of someone fighting the inevitable pull of sleep. The bubble-ensconced fishman took a tentative step toward the broken and jammed-together rift. Dutchman, can you hear me? Wood shifted, a hand breaking its way free through the mass of splintered deck. Wisps of red diffused into the water around from dozens of small punctures and lacerations only made worse from the effort. Decken stumbled back as a matching arm broke through next to the first, the pair working in tandem to pull the rest of their attached body from beneath the mobile wreckage. With a gasp and a spray of wood chips, Prince Fukuboshi's upper body exploded from the warped rift. He, like the ship, was a wreck. His arms had not been alone in their abuse at the hands of Dutchman's desperate final play. Splinters ranging in size from less than an inch to nearly a full foot stuck from points of his muscles, while those that had come loose left open wounds oozing his lifeblood behind. He coughed, reaching up to pull a thick shard of wood from where it was lodged much too close to an eye for his comfort. Not that anything about the whole situation could be considered any variation of comfortable. A gash ran from his hairline, around his face, and ended at his chin with a width and depth that were sure to scar. Ah, Fukuboshi, Decken stuttered. I see Dutchman gave you a run for your money. And no hard feelings? There are many, many hard feelings, you psychotic madman, the prince hissed, hauling the rest of his body from the ship. He winced, shuffling over to where his trident was stabbed into the railing. One yank ripped the tri-pronged weapon from the wood, the injured prince twirling it without so much as an obvious impediment. He finished its spin with all points now pointed at the pirate captain. There is nothing you can do at this point to make the royal family even consider forgiving what you've done to us, but I've got a few questions for you. I expect answers, Vander Decken, or else. The fishman across the deck made a noise somewhere between a whimper and a gasp, with its approximate spelling somewhere in the range of Jahirk. Fukuboshi took that as acceptance. Tell me, Decken. What is Poseidon? You, the fishman blinked. You don't know? I assumed all the royal family knew. I would not ask if I did. The prince rebuffed. Now answer me.
It's the ancient power to call on sea kings, passed down from princess to princess through the royal line. The first Decken came to Fishman Island looking for the power, but no mermaid princess awoke the ability until my dear. He stopped, the trident at his neck. He reconsidered his words. You until Shirahoshi. She's the current Poseidon.
How do you know she is this Poseidon? It was 10 years ago, Decken began, his wistful tone allayed by another reminder of the weapon at his neck. When that celestial dragon washed up on the island. He threatened the queen, awakening the first use of Shirahoshi's power. I witnessed it and knew in my heart that Shirahoshi was the newest Poseidon. I reviewed the logs of my forefathers and confirmed her power was the one my ancestors had longed to find. That day, I swore to marry her. That won't happen, Fukuboshi hissed. Now call off your power on this ship and I'll take you in alive. You can have your disgusting fantasies from a cold jail cell for the rest of your life instead of dying here and now. Yeehaha, a weak voice laughed. The glow of the ship slowly condensed, creating the mangled form of Flying Dutchman. The line down his middle where the prince had bisected him was now a mess of poor healing, as if it were metal and his center had been welded together with too much heat. He sat against the railing, supported, as if manifesting was all he could do with even standing out of his abilities. He hacked, spectral essence disappearing into the ether. Me? Apologies, Cappying, I lost. Oh, Dutchman, Decken said, true lament in his voice. What have I done to you? Worry not about me, Cappying. I gladly give me life in her service, but I can't watch as ye consider giving up. Anger smoldered in the Klabouterman's eyes. Now's our chance, Cappying. Silent, turning his trident on the spirit. You admitted to wishing for the death of my sister, counter to your captain's wishes, now that I know. A squelch cut Fukuboshi's declaration short. His eyes turned downward, where Decken's extended leg connected to his torso just beneath his ribs. The merman shifted back, revealing the steel blade protruding from the pirate's shoe slick with his blood. The royal coughed, thankful that they were underwater or else his punctured lung would have proved more immediately fatal. Strength left his arms and he collapsed, glaring. Dutchman grinned a pained, essence-stained grin as his body started to decompose for the last time. This battle had not been in vain. D. Decken, sorry, brother-in-law, but you're standing between me and my Shirahoshi. I'll be sure to tell her how you bravely fought waves of foes before. A female scream tore through the water, punctuated by the Sea King that ripped through the ship from below. Dutchman let out a final, strangled gasp of pain as he exploded into chunks similar to the bits that now hung in the water. The bow of the ship came to a screeching halt as it impacted another Sea King's side, throwing Decken and Fukaboshi headlong into its mucus-covered hind before bouncing back. The face of a beaked eel turned hungry eyes on what remained of the once proud ship. Behind the second Sea King floated Shirahoshi, her bloodshot eyes leaking tears into the surrounding waters. This contrasted with the look of rage twisting her beautiful features into a horrid expression Fukaboshi had never seen on his sister before. Shine and Dave, the guards he'd left with her at the start of this mission, backed away slowly. "You hurt my big brother," Shirahoshi hissed, the Sea Kings with her echoing her words with their own language. Their eyes glazed over as the overwhelming power of Poseidon directed them without finesse nor control. The emotions Shirahoshi had buried the last decade, the fear, rage, grief, and all other manner of negative feelings poured forth all at once, burying her usual placid temperament under a tsunami of murderous intent. "My sweet Shirahoshi," Decken smiled, spreading his arms to greet the image of rage whose countenance he ignored with all the skill of a love-blind fool. "You've finally come to me." "You hurt my big brother," she repeated, the Sea Kings tensing as waters on the edge of their view colored with battling monsters filled with the princess's terrible feelings. "Get him." The Sea Kings attacked. The echoing roar of the Kraken ground the war in the Goncourt Plaza to a halt. Civilians screamed with worry for themselves and their brave defenders as the giant invertebrate, who still managed to have a traditional mouth with teeth, somehow, despite teeth requiring some sort of skeletal structure, squirmed into the battle. Said mouth was bared in a snarl directed at every fighter below, its malice glimmering in its eyes. "Look, mommy." The words of a child above the chaos carried the glee of their originator, free of the fear or understanding of the rest of the viewers. "It's Sarum. We found him. Hi, Sarum." A look of momentary panic swept across the octopi's face, clearing its anger like a raging flood, before it seemed to remember that it was not currently surrounded by any highly conductive liquid and, as a result, was not as liable to be fried to a crisp as he had been upon first meeting with the child and his chosen family. Satisfied with this, the Kraken turned its glare on the bird holding the toddler and young mother. Sarum?" Ace stuttered, his childish mind trying to reason why the big fish thingy he had decided was his friend didn't seem happy to see them. One tentacle came up, swiping through the air in a way that forced Billy to dodge. "That's mean, Sarum. Stop it." "Sweetie, Sarum isn't himself right now," Nami said, trying to spare the child his feelings whilst in the midst of battle. While they could handle him having a fit, it would only make the fight that much harder. "Maybe he's hungry," the boy suggested. "Some of the old wizard guys said people act different when they're hungry, right?" "You're in for it now," a group of fishman pirates laughed, their confidence in their odds ballooning with the addition of the largest ace in the whole of their forces that they knew of. Compounded, even, by the aggressive action. The cephalopod didn't seem to appreciate their words, its eyes narrowing further as it whipped its nearest tentacle around to smack them. They screamed before hitting the wall, the Kraken barely looking their way as it growled at everyone involved. The message was clear, it wasn't a fan of anyone here. "Yes," Nami sighed, trying to keep the sarcasm from her tone. "I think he's hungry, Ace." "Oi, Kraken," a voice growled, said Sea Beast, freezing at the sound of its title. The giant octopus froze, turning like a rusty door to stare at the leader of the new fishman pirates. "You better remember which side you're fighting for, or your brother might have an accident." The Kraken's eyes carried several emotions, hate and fear being the two most prominent, but worry, self-loathing, and reluctance also simmered below the surface. He swung at the bird again, his tentacle stopping just short of a group of a flying merman after Billy's avoidance, the sheer air pressure blasting them off into the crowd watching the battle from the top of the cliff. "Holy cow," Nami hissed, the soft ringing of her snail dragging her focus away from that scene. "Billy, focus on evasion. I think we need to take this call." "Wah," the gigafowl confirmed as the navigator answered. "This is not good," Amy's voice announced over the snail. "The only blessing we have is the Kraken doesn't seem to care about collateral to their forces." "But that's something they can afford," Coby grunted, the clang of his sword suggesting he was attempting to multitask just to be part of this conversation. "Pterodactyl swarm. That's a massive ace they just pulled from their belt." "Me?" the so-named boy blinked. "That guy could eat us alive?" Usopp cried. "It would be rather inconvenient," Robin agreed, ignoring the panicked screams from her background noise. "Based on his size and most likely genus, digestion could take anywhere between 6 to 9 hours assuming he swallows us whole and does not grind us to giblets with those teeth he possesses, therefore." Not helping, Usopp, Grace, Frankie, and Mary yelled. Tangentially connected, Robin pivoted quickly. Coby is correct. The incapacitation of any individual within our faction is an astronomical loss in comparison to our adversaries due to our altogether limited numbers. If I were to describe our situation currently, I would call it a pile of... You did not just create a poneglyphic swear for the sole reason of having one and say all that just to use it, Nami bit out. You possess no proof for or against such an accusation. Ah, they brought out human prisoners. I shall go deal with that. Robin. Nami yelled. This ain't helpin' us right now, Jin called, but Robin had already extricated herself from the conversation. He sighed but forged ahead. We've got a big octopus that's bout to wreck all of our stuff. I got a good jump a second ago, but I'm too drained to pull off something like Donna did on our way in. Nami could hear the strain in his voice, but whether it was from having to censor himself on the fly or because he was on the bottle's front lines, she couldn't totally tell. He's too big for any of my chemicals to affect him, Grace admitted. I'm not strong enough to make so much at one time, and I didn't really study more than human biology. I don't have any workable large-scale techniques that won't take me out of the fight, either. Daddy, punch the mean out of Sarum, Ace recommended before he paused. Please, he added as if pleasantries were merely an afterthought. Yo-ho-ho, he already sounds exactly like Luffy, Brooke laughed. I don't know if the cuteness outweighs the sheer terror I feel at the thought of another, smaller Luffy, Sanji commented. Now if they had a girl that looked just like Nami Swan. I will skin you alive, said Mother hissed into the snail. Daddy, Ace yelled. Luffy began. I could probably take him out with a giant elephant gun, and Ace did say please. You don't need to do that, Luffy, Chopper said, having to yell to be heard over the rumblings of the brachio tank. His voice distanced itself from the snail, the doctor calling out coordinates for Frankie, the exchange quickly followed by an explosion. Anyway, I've got something that can take on Sarum, so you guys can go get the leaders. Good idea, Chopper, the captain nodded. I'm starting to get hungry, so let's hurry up so we can get that victory banquet started. Nami gave an exasperated sigh as the snail in her hand salivated, mimicking her husband as he dreamed of all the good food he was sure the kingdom would offer them when everything was said and done. Yay, food! Ace agreed. Ace's future development will be an amazing study on the values and processes of the ongoing argument between nature versus nurture. Chopper rambled. For him to be raised separated from Luffy for the first part of his life yet retain so many similarities places a surprising amount of evidence toward the argument for nature, but if such can be overridden through continued interaction with the rest of us. Chopper, the Kraken? Amy reminded him. Oh, yes. I'll save the scientific ramifications and case studies for later. Frankie, drop me off here. It's time to rumble. The braying roar that Chopper released as his body grew reached both combatants and viewers. Merfolk and fishfolk alike stared in awe and horror as the cute little doctor's mass multiplied exponentially, his height rising to rival even their beloved king or princess while thick brown hair sprouted over his new form. Antlers added another story to his building-like size, curling and twisting in a mess of calcium phosphate covered in dark velvet. Even the eyes of the Kraken widened as one of his targets grew to the point of being able to look him in the eye directly. Ah! Usopp screamed as the familiar form of Chopper's monster point shifted its weight. He's gonna go rogue again. Wait, Usopp! The massive pirate placated, holding up his palms. His voice almost echoed, as if several voices of various deep resonances were speaking at the same time. I'm in control, see? This was one of the things I focused on while. I can use this form for 3 minutes without any trouble at all. I think that's exactly what we needed, Frankie grinned. Oi, devil bro. Watch my super Braco Tank 5 for a sec. I need to go get something. Sonny, shift to Dock 4, would y'all? Roger that, Maker. A volley of cannonballs blew from Sonny's various cannons, blowing away the small horde of fishman pirates that had been trying to attack her, before her hull rumbled. Adam Wood ground against the cobbles of the plaza as her insides rotated, until the number 4 appeared on her side. Frankie grinned, his white teeth almost sparkling as he made his way to where the paneling rose much like a garage door. That's gonna be so cool, Chopper whispered to himself. Whisper, now being a relative term since his echoing voice was loud enough for the enemies around him to hear at any volume. Shaking the thought away with the memory that he was now on a time crunch, the transformed reindeer turned his attention to the gargantuan cephalopod. Alright, Sarum. I think it's time you fight someone your own size. Graw, the Kraken responded, his gelatinous body undulating forward in a charge. Chopper met him halfway, shoulder-checking the monsters in the area that could colloquially be called a chin but cannot be atomically because of the aforementioned irregularity of the creature's skeletal structure or lack thereof. Even so, its teeth clacked painfully as its mouth was forced shut, the Kraken letting out a grunt of pain before moving its tentacles to retaliate. Slimy limbs wrapped themselves around Chopper's legs, threatening to pull his feet out from under him. He lowered his center of gravity as his hands shot out to either side, all but backhanding the limbs coming for his arms. You'll need to try harder than that if you want to beat me, Sarum, Chopper grinned, Rosario carving paw. Graw, the Kraken cried, its flesh distending inward as his squishy body absorbed the impact of the giant hand. Now that's a battle of epic proportions. Mary grinned as she watched Chopper and Sarum trade blows. She turned to her companions. A panting Coby arriving at her side. Alright, Captain Luffy's got Hody, but that still leaves the tall one, the shorty, the hammerhead, the purple one, and the human guy that followed us down. Who wants who? I would rather not face the one with the hammer, Yoho, Brook offered. Perhaps I shall call dibs on the one with several arms. I'll take the guy with the hammer, Coby decided. Nami and I fought him to get Ace back, so I've seen parts of his moveset. The short guy really annoyed me, Grace commented. He talked about eating me when I fought him last time. Let me handle him, then, Amy said. You can have the purple one. With my armament, there's no way the bite happy over there can get through me. I think it'd be better for you to take the human, Mary told her. I can handle the shorty, but Caribou is a mud logia or something. Only you, Captain Luffy, or Jin could take him on right now. Where is Jin, by the way? He's over with Sunny helping Frankie with something, Grace answered. Based on the excitement I can feel rolling off him, it's gonna be something big. Their captain backflipped away from whatever skirmish he'd just finished, his rubber body landing amongst his crewmates. He stood, popping his neck, as the others turned their attentions on him. Oh, hey guys. What's up? We were getting ready to charge the big guys, Coby explained, gesturing to the small group of the new Fishman pirates' top brass. Care to join us, Captain? Of course, Luffy nodded. As one, the group took off into a run, each keeping up with Luffy in their own way. Mary and Coby needed moonwalk and shave while Brook just had the sheer speed needed. Grace used explosions to propel her forward and Amy lightened herself. The 6 pirates made for a rather fearsome image, when they caught the attention of the group they approached. Looks like we can't stand around anymore, Caribou chuckled, bits and pieces of himself sloughing off into globs of swamp. Remember, they're worth more alive, so. Shut up, human, Hody snarled. You get what you get. Men, tear them to shreds. Show these humans the power of the Fishman race. Yes, Captain, the officers responded, as one swallowing several of the improved steroids Zio had produced. They hunched for a moment before the chemicals finished their work, their eyes glowing a sinister red. I feel so powerful, Dosun. The hammerhead of the group grinned. Let them come, I'll smash them into paste, Dosun. This is it, Zio grinned. I can feel the effects of my work for myself, the strength flowing through my veins. Kayakia. Daruma laughed. Those humans' bones will feel brittle between my teeth, Kya. Let's make dried squid out of them, Ikaros agreed. Straw Hats, Hachi cried, still on his side with his arms tied behind his back. Don't worry about my safety. It's fine if I die as long as you save the island. Listen up, guys, Luffy muttered, his pointed gaze locked with Hody's superior smirk. I don't know what those pills have done to them, but don't let them catch you off guard. If you need to, don't hesitate to take them out, got it? Roger. The group broke, each member launching themselves at their chosen opponent. Have it you, Brook yelled, the point of his blade meeting the crossed shafts of Ikaro's spears with enough force to drive him backward. Let's go, short stack, Mary laughed, throwing her rigging arts at the shortest of the fishmen. Daruma jumped, attempting to avoid the attack, only for one of Mary's ropes to wrap around his ankle. Daruma let out a short scream before the Clabouterman threw him away, following shortly thereafter. Cretaceous charge, Coby roared, his shave turning into a gallop as he took on his Dino mode. Dosun swung his hammer down, trying to stop the rival pirate's stampede, but Coby expertly flicked his horns at the right time to knock the hammer off course. With that aside, there was nothing but air between the zone and the fishman, Coby barreling into the hammerhead with the speed of a truck. Come to me, Caribou grinned, his torso lengthening as he prepared to absorb the blonde flying toward him into his hammer space. His eyes narrowed in a leer, though it lacked the emotion Amy would have expected from a sleazebag like him. Rather than lust, it was greed that shone in his dark eyes. Said eyes widened as, instead of trying to stop, Amy activated the breath dial in her parasol and rocketed into his gut, her hockey-covered foot digging into his stomach as if his logia powers meant nothing. His eyes widened as they threatened to pop out of his head. Zio and Grace met on nearly equal terms, both lashing forward with their chosen weapons, a weighted chain for Zio and a whip of condensed argon for Grace, with the other catching the end with their free hand. It seems we were fated to battle, Zio began, both of his arms straining to maintain their short status quo. I am the head scientist of the new Fishman Pirates and your wanted poster calls you an emotional terror of a chemist, mood painter. Talk about outdated information, Grace replied. At least, it will be when the newest set of wanted posters comes out. Your steroids are a pretty good substitute and shortcut, I'll give you that, but the fact is you morons just weren't willing to put in the work like we were. What is that supposed to mean? The Wabagon questioned, his glowing eyes narrowing. Grace responded by jerking her arms, using the pair of mid-range weapons to lift Zio off the earth before pulling him toward her. Why? Neon argon, you hypocrite! The swirling ball of gas dug into Zio's chest, the purple humanoid hacking up blood as the force ground against his enhanced body. The attack exploded a second later, blasting the fishman scientist away with grace in hot pursuit. "I'm a hypocrite, am I?" Zio said, flipping onto his feet. He spun, his weighted chain whistling through midair as he swung it at the incoming chemist. Formed in her hands, the pair of hard air weapons bringing the chain to a loud stop. Zio flicked his wrist, the end of the chain dancing at his command to wrap around Grace's wrist. She fought back, but the former agent was not the heaviest lifter of the crew, the fishman's strength outstripping her own. Wind whistled in her ears as Zio arched her over his head, the girl slamming into the earth behind him. "Ow," Grace complained, sending a rush of adrenaline through her mind to help counter the scrapes that now adorned her back from the rough landing. Another flick of the weapon brought her closer, the taller fighter holding her off the ground suspended by her wrist. "Now then, human," Zio began. "What was that about me being a hypocrite?" "It's just that you're a moron, too," the woman smirked, her leg lashing out in a kick to his side. Zio grunted, his grip on his chain loosening instinctively. Grace used this to her advantage, barely setting her feet on the ground before she was jumping, her lighter body swinging around Zio with an argon whip materializing in her hands. His own came up, drawing the chemical from his windpipe, but there was nothing else he could do without the risk of asphyxiation. A foot kicked the back of his knee, Zio dropping into a crouch without any choice in the matter. "Let me explain something to you, Mr. Fishman Pirate Scientist," Grace muttered into the approximate area where his ear would be, given the wabagong did not have any visible. "I ate the chem fruit. The devil fruit allowing me to manipulate and feel the atoms and compounds all around me. That booster you've got flowing through your veins has a trace in it. You used my work to make it." "That's ridiculous," Zio denied, struggling against the whip holding him. For a moment, he wished he'd exercised with his companions at least a couple more times considering how much that compounded multiplication would have helped here. "You've been silent for the past 2 years. You have no work to speak of. Compounds thought impossible and other such nonsense," the woman said, the fishman stiffening in her binds at the title. "Robin tells me it's a page-turner, but the research that went into it was way more fun than putting it together." But that book was written by," realization dawned on him. But Zio refused to admit to any failure on his part. "I mean, of course I knew you were the magpie. It was obvious. Obviously, I was lulling you into a false sense of security." "Sure you were," Grace chuckled. "I wasn't exactly trying to hide it with a pseudonym like Maggie G. Bird. I mean, I couldn't put Grace Marigold on the cover when that's what my wanted poster says, though the next copy should have both my epithets. How could you know my methods from seeing the final product in use? That's impossible. Every chemical reaction leaves traces behind and every compound that I originated in that book leaves behind a little carbon trioxide or hydrogen disulfate. Very hard to stabilize, you know, but every process leaves enough lingering atoms to bond. Based on the CO3 in your blood. I know you used the chapter on managing high oxidizing combustibles. Don't want your insides to spontaneously combust from overdose? So you know how the improved energy steroids work." Zio relaxed, taking in a deep breath of air. As he did, Grace felt the compounds in his system react with the increased oxygen, multiplying his strength for a short moment. But a moment was all he needed, his arms ripping the argon whip apart. Grace did not have the time needed to react before his elbow planted itself into her gut, the fishman following through by throwing the human over his shoulder. For the second time, Grace landed on her back, but this time she had the fist of a fishman going berserk descending on her. Argon wall, purple condensed, forming a triangular barrier above her head, the angle deflecting the force of Zio's first punch to the side. It skidded along the opaque structure before hitting the ground beside it. Grace reevaluated his treat level as she watching his hand rise from the new hole it had made. "You're a brilliant mind," Zio admitted, his breathing deep and slow. He punched her wall again, this one producing a thin crack. "It's only a shame you were born a human." Another punch, this one causing spiderweb cracks across the entire triangular frame. "Maybe you should pray to whatever god you worship that you'll live your next life as a mermaid in the new Fishman Empire." Zio's final punch shattered the argon wall, the broken structure dissipating into whiffs of gas as the crystalline structure the atoms had been forced into was smashed. Grace had not been idle, however, her guitar held vertically above her face and chest. It was the latter of these options that Zio felt enter his hand between the center two knuckles, severing tendons, veins, and arteries with his own momentum. "My hand," the scientist cried, jumping away to inspect the damage. His right hand was now divided down the middle to the wrist, only his thumb operating anywhere close to regular function. "You human bitch, what have you done?" Grace did not respond, the young woman showing off her flexibility by hopping onto her feet before dashing toward the injured pirate officer. Zio tried to counter, but with his dominant hand in shambles, there was little he could do against the nimbler human, her blades cutting superficial but painful lines over his arms. Zio jumped backward, his uninjured hand reaching for more energy steroids he had on him. Another boost should do the trick, even with his debilitation. A flash of white and green was all Grace needed to see what he was trying to do. A wave of her hand created a thin, purple needle from gas in the air and another launched it forward. Gia! Zio cried, the pill he'd been holding lost to the ground. Red dripped from the new hole in his palm, the needle still all the way through his hand. A flex shattered the pointed item, but that satisfaction was short-lived and painfully underwhelming. In the face of this latest development, he chose to listen to his brain and flee, the Wabagong camouflaging himself as he attempted to crawl away over the ground. His plan proved to be a bust, the human pressing her boot into his back, pinning his bleeding mess of a hand between his bulk and ground. I can sense the chemicals in your blood, remember? Grace mocked, kneeling down on the fishman. Her hand grabbed the back of his neck, liquids secreting themselves from her pores as she mentally sifted through the various concepts that gave the pirate his cheats. Now, let's see what we can do to counteract those steroids, Zio whimpered. A flick of his head sent Dosun sprawling, Coby pawing the ground as he eyed the fishman getting to his knees. A rumbling growl rose from his throat, a vocalization of dislike without words felt on an instinctual level.
That actually hurt, you bastard, Dosun, the fishman grunted, turning to the dinosaur. He shook his shoulders, loosening his muscles for what was to come. Wait, I recognize you, Dosun. You're the one they call the survivor, the one that survived execution by the world government, Dosun. And you were with the redhead when she took back the kid, Dosun.
Yeah, so? Coby questioned. None of that knowledge is going to help you win this fight. You should surrender now.
Surrender. Dosun echoed, trying to hold back a laugh at the mere mention of such a thing. To a human. How stupid can you be, Dosun? Duho-ho-ho. Listen here, human. I have chosen to dedicate my life to the founding of the new Fishman Empire under the control of Captain Hody, and he wants you all dead. I will give him that or die trying, Dosun.
Then come get me. The fighters charged each other, Coby shrinking into his hybrid mode and drawing his swords. Dosun came in for an overhead swing, planning to smash the young man into a paste. Understandably, Coby didn't want that, the Rosset crossing his swords over his head to catch the downward momentum. The ground under his feet cracked and shay as hammer met swords, Coby gritting his teeth as he trusted his zone constitution and all the strength training he'd been through. Dosun didn't seem to think that was an acceptable outcome, rearing back for another attack. Dosun, Dosun, Doken, Doken, Boken, why won't you die, Boken? Coby grit his teeth, his legs shaking from the repeated blows. Each strike had served to drive his feet into the earth like nails into wood, making shave an impossibility, and with the speed and power granted to him from the improved energy steroids, the time between each hit had shortened, giving Coby no time to escape. A crack echoed in Coby's ear.
Time seemed to slow as the swordsman's eyes darted, trying to locate the origin of such a sound. There was a crying presence in his haki, a fierce yell of pain and dedication that he could not truly hear.
Bang! There, his eyes located it, a tiny crack growing more and more with each strike of the hammer. Unfortunately, it was not Dosun's weapon that was at the breaking point. Coby's left sword had cracked. The Rosset pulled his swords back, swinging them in time with Dosun's next attempt. The dual swords met the side of the hammer, redirecting it into the earth to the human's right where it pulverized the cobblestone.
36 caliber Phoenix. Dosun hopped away, blood leaking from his arm where he'd blocked the close-range flying slash. Coby took that time to escape the dirt, inspecting his weapons. The crack in his blade was diagonal, rising from by the hilt up into the center of the sword.
So this is what Zoro-sensei meant when he talked about hearing the voices of his swords in Alabasta, Coby mused, keeping his observation focused on Dosun in case he tried anything new. I'm sorry, old friend, but I don't think I can do this without you. A feeling came from the blade, but Coby couldn't be sure if it was truly there or if some part of his mind was trying to rationalize an impossibility. Nodding, the young man looked up to see Dosun downing another pill. His hair grew, graying as it did. Dosun was panting now, puffs of steam forming with every breath. I'm gonna kill you, Zugan, the hammerhead hissed, rocketing forward with a twist as if he'd become a top, spinning Dosun. 5-point style. Meteor swords, Coby countered, meeting him halfway. Horns and blades scraped against spinning hammer, sparks flying from their points of impact as Coby's defense ate away at Dosun's momentum. The crack in his blade worsened. Finally, Coby let the remaining force send him backward, the loss of resistance sending Dosun off balance. Slasher mode. Piercing comet, Dosun hissed, holding back a cry of pain as Coby's long horn and two swords stabbed him in 3 places. He was lucky the steroids had increased the density of his muscles or that attack could have been a lot worse, but as it was, Coby was just too fast for him to hit with the following swing. Unseen disaster, Coby vanished, a cut opening on Dosun's arm. He swung wildly, unable to catch more than a glimpse of his opponent as cut after cut, line after line carved themselves into his skin. Show yourself, Zugan, don't be a coward, Bagon. The thing to be said about observation haki, a fact proven by the Monkey D. Luffy of a different timeline. is that attacks cannot be seen with it if even the attacker does not know where the attack will go. It was this phenomena that occurred. Dosun's hammer coming around in a backswing, clipping Coby in the side. The force knocked him off course, his slasher mode, a glass cannon at the best of times, rolling over the harsh stone. Ha! Dosun laughed, sauntering over to where Coby was hacking on the ground, one hand pressed into his side where he'd been hit near the ribs. I finally got you, Bagon, time to die, Bagon. The human scrambled for his swords, just managing to shift into his sturdier armor mode and get his Sabaku no Kiba between him and the coming hammer. With a whale in his observation haki, Koby's cracked sword gave out, snapping along the break. The instant happened in slow motion to the Rosset as one of the weapons he'd trusted since Logia Town met its end. The broken piece pinged off his bone plating, the remaining sword and what remained on the other hilt struggling to hold the hammer at bay. Looks like this fight is mine, boy, Bagon, Dosun laughed. You shouldn't have given me the chance to get that last steroid, Bagon, now die for the coming empire, Bagon. Coby dropped his 1.5 swords, crossing his arms to catch the blow. His arms plating creaked under the strain as Dosun's red-eyed smirk grew. He'd done it. He'd taken out a straw hat, the one the world government couldn't even kill. Dosun coughed blood, his glowing eyes widening and his smirk falling into a gasp as pain registered from his chest. He looked down slowly to see the remaining complete sword stabbed into and through his chest, the handle in the grip of the zone's prehensile spiked tail. He stepped back, the sword coming with him as Coby panted. I'm sorry it had to be this way, Coby said, Dosun losing the strength in his legs as he fell to his knees. Coby stood, shrinking into his human form as he approached his run-through foe. Dosun's eyes reflected fear and hatred in equal measure as the young man drew closer. I hope you can find peace wherever you end up. But Captain Hody, Dosun, the fishman fell over, his eyes losing their glow as his light disappeared from Koby's haki. With Dosun, another part of Coby died. Caribou's eyes threatened to pop out of his skull as the pain of 1,500 kilos of human focused into the impact area of a women's size 7 shoe slammed into his stomach. His tongue, which usually lolled out of his mouth, was now straight as an arrow as the pain expressed itself in physical form along the rules and standards of the universe in which he existed. Because of the haki coating the strike, the swamp man could not separate himself to negate some of the damage, so it was his true body that shot away from the weightless woman. An epithet he realized was produced for the alliteration and not for the accuracy, before splattering against the far wall of the plaza. You know, I'm disappointed, Amy scowled, the blonde sauntering toward the rival pirate as he tried to reform through the aching pain. Not only do I not get to fight the guy that threatened to eat my sister, not only do I not get to fight one of the fishmen, not only do I not get to crush their weapons in my own hands, but I have to fight a dirty little monster like you. You better not ruin my dress. Well, you won't need it where you're going, the Logia sneered, his upper torso now recongealed into a humanoid shape. Your bounty isn't so high as some of the others on your crew. That means I can get more for you by selling you to the celestial dragons. Amy's nose wrinkled at the suggestion, the back of her throat burning with nausea at the mere suggestion of what would await her at the end of such a fall. Caribou giggled, a shower of berries dancing through his mind. Hard rock bullet. Caribou screamed, scrambling out of the way as a pebble with the mass of a boulder crashed into the wall before which he'd been standing. His eyes cut from the cracking vertical surface to the shadowed face of the woman he'd offended, said woman preparing to blow into another rock. His mind switched from capturing her to a new goal. Current objective: survive. Caribou was by no means a brave soul. The bravest thing he'd probably ever done was taking to the seas to try his own hand in the great pirate era, but any confidence he'd had in his powers was dashed as he came face to face with the legendary ability he'd heard about that could cause a Logia lose the advantage they'd held in paradise. Spare me, he cried, prostrating himself before the terrifying woman. He reached for Amy's ankle, the woman stepping away from his covered hands. The fishmen, they forced me to do this. I didn't want to help them, but they attacked us as we approached the island. They've got my crew hostage. Mary Aura fight you had with her, Sanji, and Chopper. We know that you were working with them and that Mary blew up your ship. That's not right, Caribou denied, scrambling for a believable lie. Those were fakes. Yes, fakes. Humans also threatened by the new fishman pirates. Other captains trying to save their crews. Amy shifted onto her back foot, her arms crossing as she gave the Logia a blank, half-lidded look. Go on, she said, waving one limp hand. Her voice came in the same tone as someone telling another, keep digging your own grave. My brother, Caribou started. Yeah, my brother, Hody locked him inside their hidden underground base. They'll kill him if I don't. Big bro. I'm back. Caribou's head whipped around at the voice, blood splatter, Caribou waving at him from atop the cliff surrounding the Goncourt Plaza. Valerian, his pet iguana, clung to the man's head like a lifeline. Caribou forged ahead, not noticing his older brother shaking his head and waving his hand before his throat in a stop talking motion. The waters around the island are really hard to swim through, but I finally found you, big bro. Now we can fight the Straw Hats together and collect their bounties like you planned. So, Caribou turned like a door with rusty hinges, Amy's single quirked eyebrow raised like the blade of a guillotine over his exposed neck. You were saying? Mistaken identity? Try the other one. Right, new plan, Caribou. Yeah, bro, the younger brother answered from up above. None of this was worth it. Activate plan, fuck this, we're leaving.
I love that plan, bro. Caribou scrambled up the side of the cliff, spurred on by the occasional hard rock bullet crashing somewhere just below him. Amy watched them leave with a tired sigh, her head hanging in one hand as he scurried over the edge and the pair vanished.
Why'd I get all the boring fights? Daruma grunted as he hit the earth, his claws grabbing the rope around his ankle so his fingernails could slice through it before the horned girl could throw him again. He rolled, just avoiding the ballistic Klabouterman as her iron body strengthened form cratered the ground where he'd been. Hopping to his feet, Daruma glared at the faux human. Kya, you all are so annoying. Why don't you just die or give in like all the others, Kayakia? You want to talk about annoying, focus on your little verbal tick, short ass. Mary rebuffed, jumping from the crater.
I am not short, Kya. The cookie cutter yelled, launching himself toward the girl mouth first. We'll see who's taller when I've taken a few bites out of you, Kya.
Cannonball barrage. Mary countered, numerous tiny cannonballs launching from her hands toward the fishman like bullets. Daruma's eyes narrowed, the diminutive shark angling himself to catch the first ball between his jaws. The projectile creaked for only a moment before shattering under the strength of the fishman's teeth. Without any time to come to terms with that, Mary's other small cannonballs met similar fates. Shit. The girl jumped, Daruma hitting the earth like a drill where she'd been standing, nothing left of his presence than the hole he'd disappeared into. I need to be careful, Mary muttered to herself, hopping away as soon as she landed. Daruma popped out of that spot a moment later, quickly vanishing back into the ground like some deadly game of whack-a-mole. Mary only landed once more, Daruma again bursting through the ground, before she decided to use moonwalk. If he wanted to hide in the ground where she couldn't see him, then she'd hang out in the air where he couldn't sense her. Let's see. I doubt my ropes will do much and he's already gotten rid of my pellets. Looks like it's time to bring out my hammers. Reaching for her belt, Mary drew her stone-headed hammers. Each was the length of her forearm topped with a rectangular slab of corundum at the end. It had taken several months for the folks at Galila to find material that would stand up to Mary's insane Luffy and Zoro given strength and another 2 before their order arrived. The first having been stolen by pirates. But Mary had grown to rely on the sturdy tools for everything between hammering nails into wood to hammering talking points into particularly thick skulls. She landed, hopping back a moment later. Sure enough, Daruma popped out where her feet had been, his sight filling with a pair of stone mauls. He dove away from the hole, the air currents from the double strike ruffling his hair. But agility and movement were core pillars for Daruma's fighting style. He recovered more quickly than Mary could, the nimble fishman throwing himself at the Klabouterman. She gasped as his jaws clamped down on her arm, the pain shooting up from where his teeth had found purchase. Her free hand brought a hammer down toward him, forcing Daruma to ditch his teeth and jump away, leaving a full set of dentures in Mary's forearm. You taste like wood, Daruma taunted, his teeth growing back in a literal second. Mary destabilized her arm, letting the dentures there fall to the ground while healing the damage that had been. I'll chew you up to splinters, Kya. I'd like to see you try. Mary's ropes rose, launching toward the smaller fighter. As indicative of his frog-like appearance, Daruma hopped through the sudden maze of hempen weaving, his clawed hands and sharp teeth ripping through wherever he needed to in his quest to reach the spirit. I've got you now, Kya. Daruma yelled as he cut through the last net trying to keep him from the spectral body of the ship girl. Mary's smirk registered to him too late, one of her hammers filling his mouth. His eyes widened as the top of the tool put pressure on his uvula, the man trying to swallow without success. The hammer's pair came up in an arch, clocking the cookie cutter in the cheek. He cried out in pain, his teeth shattering on impact. Yeah, you really got me, Mary taunted, watching the fishman writhe on the ground as he wrestled with the pain of his broken teeth. You bitch, Daruma swore, his words slightly slurred as he tried to remove shards of his own bone from his gums. Just you wait until I get my teeth around her heart, Kayakia. Oh, that's right. Fore said something about you all knowing about Klaboutermans. More than the average person, anyway. Too bad for you, you don't know where my heart is. It's around your neck, Kya. Mary recoiled at the instant response, a hand coming up to rest against the choker she wore that carried her lifeline to the mortal world. Sure, it was heart-shaped, but she didn't think it was that obvious. We aren't morons, contrary to what you humans think. I'm surprised you know the word, contrary, and there have been plenty of pirates who have seen you over the last couple years that were willing to give up some Klabouterman secrets with enough persuasion, Kya. Now then. He reached into his shirt, pulling another pill from within before swallowing it. Let me devour that heart of yours, Kya. That's no way to get a lady's favor, Mary rebuffed, bending backwards to avoid the flying shark whose aim was her throat. Besides, having been created on a ship of mostly guys means you don't quite have what I'm looking for. Like I care, kya. His hand hit the earth where Mary had been standing, his newfound strength carving a trench where before had been solid cobblestone. Mary's mind flashed back to a dozen times when she'd needed to fight foes who were physically stronger than her, and one tactic that worked for many came to the forefront. Well, this shirt's ruined anyway, she muttered, readying another jump to escape Daruma's relentless attack. She stumbled, however, her foot catching on the edge of one of his holes from before. His red eyes narrowed in the equivalence of a smirk as he lunged, his teeth ready to rip the girl apart. Her own eyes widened as her brain shut down. Just before he made contact, Mary destabilized. Daruma's fangs ripped through the collar of her shirt. Swallowing her heart, Holshman only seemed to realize the problem once it was too late, the girl reforming inside him. To think, after a life of eating that which he hated, it would be something he ate that would spell his end. He exploded, and where he had been knelt Mary, the Klabouterman wide-eyed with her default white raincoat covered in gore. She covered herself with her hands as best she could while she came to terms with what she'd just done. Ascension's blood was not only on her hands, but literally everywhere else, too. It's a good thing Chopper mentioned mandatory psych evals, she chuckled, doing her best to avoid a breakdown. I think gonna need it. Yo-ho-ho, Brooke laughed, hopping away from Ikaro's retaliatory stride. The two now stood apart from anyone else, the giant squid fish man staring down even the abnormally tall skeleton. I must say, you paint a scary visage with all those arms of yours. Like you're one to talk, ch, Ikaro's shot back. How the hell am I supposed to turn you into dried squid if you're already dried up, ch? Now that's not a very nice thing to say. My makeup artists always told me I had a flawless complexion. We'll see how good your complexion is after I'm done with you, ch, the SX-tuple-armed fish man charged, his right side's 3 squid spears thrusting toward the former human. Brooke parried to the side, shifting his body weight, what little of it remained, to the left to assist in his avoidance. His blade whipped through the air like a metal fan, blurring with speed, only for 2 of Ikaro's spears to intercept it. Don't underestimate the power of fishmen, you freak, ch, squid surplus. He struck, all 6 of his spears descending on the swordsman. Brooke twisted between them, parrying where necessary, but each attack that did not land was simply repeated, Ikaro's arms slowly blurring until his weapons were little more than afterimages. I can't keep up, Brooke thought, a gasp escaping past his teeth as the spears all found purchase through his clothing. 2 of them had slipped between the gaps in his ribs while the others stood between his ribs and pelvis. His skull rolled, jaw agape, and his tongue would have rolled if he'd had one. Now you're done, human, Ikaro's laughed, hefting Brooke over his head like some trophy of battle. I'll show your dead body to your friends and, he blinked. This doesn't feel right, ch. This guy is really light and I can't feel my squid spears draining any water from him, ch. Yo-ho-ho. The skeleton laughed, Ikaro's stiffening in fear. His head slowly turned upward to see a green, gaseous image somewhat shaped like a skull coming from Brooke's mouth. I must apologize, but I'm afraid I'm already bone dry, yo-ho-ho-ho. What the hell are you, ch? The fishman demanded, throwing Brooke's body away. The spirit looked at him in what could only be described as annoyance as his bones ragdolled over the cobblestones. With narrow whoosh, the spectral gas was sucked back into the skinless cadaver, Brooke hopping back to his feet.
I am an undead, you see, Brooke explained, Ikaro's backpedaling slightly as his mind tried to solve how to kill an opponent that is A, already dead and B, already dry. Brooke walked forward, keeping the distance between them constant. I came to terms with that during my crew's separation, and in doing too, the winds of hell gifted me with knowledge of the underworld.
Stay back, ch, I'm warning you, ch, don't you worry, Brooke muttered, his words causing the exact opposite to happen. Soul solid as a sharp blade. You won't even feel it when I cut you. No, I refuse. Since his spears seemed to be no help at all, the fishman threw them away, balling his hands into fists. He couldn't stab a skeleton, so he'd need to settle for blunt force and hope that the loss of his body would keep the freak down. Let's see how you like this, ch. Making use of his new strength granted by the steroids, Ikaro's jammed his hands into the stonework below, scooping out 6 rocks each roughly shaped like a scoop of ice cream. Unlike the dairy product, these hunks of earth would probably neither taste good nor give someone a good feeling. Ikaro's threw the rocks, between his 6 arms and an infinite source of earth to reload from. The original volley quickly turned into a steady stream of fist-sized rocks, each moving at speeds to rival Ikaro's earlier attack.
Understandably not wanting to be hit by such a thing, Brooke ran to the right, curving around his foe. The fishman turned in time with him, the cloud of dust that the skeleton's passing created only compounded by the impacts of the rocky projectiles. Within 2 rotations, however, Ikaro's noticed a problem with this plan.
Their section of the battlefield was now covered in a cloud of dust, the ground littered with the debris and detritus of the latest failed attack. The lingering dust hung in the air like fog, leaving the surroundings as nothing but various shades of brown and gray. Most notably, the skeleton was nowhere to be seen. "Where are you, CH?" the fishman yelled, his eyes darting back and forth as he searched for some hint of his foe. "Yo-ho-ho!" Ikaros whipped around, launching another rock at the direction where the laugh had come from, but the projectile only displaced the dust in the air, the cloud swirling in on itself from the generated winds. The world seemed to darken, Ikaros shivering at a sudden chill in the surroundings. "This battle is over." Ikaros jolted at the voice, the giant squid fishman turning to find Brook with his back to him. The skeleton had his sword out but was in the process of sheathing it. "My sword soul solid carries with it the chilling winds of the underworld, and they have already cut you." Pastoral Song, Blizzard Slash. His blade clicked into place, the timing in conjunction with a line of ice that sprouted over Ikaros' front and back. He was lucky to have all the epigenetic processes to survive the cold, but Ikaros still felt his teeth chatter as his body gave into the cut it had received but could not feel. "I've turned into freeze-dried squid, CH," a female scream tore through the water, punctuated by the sea king that ripped through the ship from below. Dutchman let out a final, strangled gasp of pain as he exploded into chunks similar to the bits that now hung in the water. The bow of the ship came to a screeching halt as it impacted another sea king's side, throwing Dekken and Fukaboshi headlong into its mucus-covered hind before bouncing back. The face of a beaked eel turned hungry eyes on what remained of the once proud ship. Behind the sea king floated Shirahoshi, her bloodshot eyes leaking tears into the surrounding waters. This contrasted with the look of rage twisting her beautiful features into a horrid expression Fukaboshi had never seen on his sister before. Shine and Dave, the guards he'd left with her at the start of this mission, backed away slowly. "You hurt my big brother," Shirahoshi hissed, the sea kings with her echoing her words with their own language. Their eyes glazed over as the overwhelming power of Poseidon directed them with neither finesse nor control. The emotions Shirahoshi had buried the last decade, the fear, rage, grief, and all other manner of negative feelings poured forth all at once, burying her usual placid temperament. "My sweet Shirahoshi," Dekken smiled, spreading his arms to greet the image of rage whose countenance he ignored with all the skill of a love-blind fool. "You've finally come to me." "You hurt my big brother," she repeated, the sea kings tensing as waters on the edge of their view colored with battling monsters filled with the princess's terrible feelings. "Get him."
The sea kings attacked. Vander Decken screamed, his four legs launching him away from the remains of his ancient ship as the beaked sea king impaled where he'd been standing.
He had no time to rest, the monster that had sprouted from the roof coming for him. Dekken dodged with another scream, the beast's teeth ripping through the water. Though he could not swim on account of his devil fruit, the legacy pirate was still a fishman, his innate instincts propelling him away from the flotsam that had once been the vessel of his forebears while his bubble kept the waters at bay. Fear etched itself into his features, but the powers of Poseidon still held his awe. "Shirahoshi!" Fukaboshi yelled, the prince rolling to just barely avoid the gnashing sea kings. His wounds ached and the stab in his ribs in particular sent throngs of pain through his core. But the prince was a warrior first and foremost. He shoved the thoughts of pain to the back of his mind, made them a problem to be solved later. "Little sister, listen to me." The giant mermaid turned to the noise, but when the prince's eyes met hers, he found no recognition in them. The princesses were bloodshot, the remnants of her tears carrying an almost purple-blue tint that crept in at the sides. The rage she had felt toward Vander Decken must have cycled into an eerie calm, for her face carried only a blank expression as the once dormant powers within her overwhelmed everything. She waved her hand, the sea kings moving at her call to attack anything and everything. Their primary target was what remained of the Flying Dutchman, the monsters tying themselves into knots as they attempted to break every board from those adjacent, to reduce the Flying Dutchman to flotsam and so much kindling. Fukaboshi called her name again, but the princess's eyes remained blank and uncomprehending, the noise only serving to draw her uninhibited ire on him. Another wave sent the tooth-filled maw of the second sea king after the prince, the merman using his trident to catch the mouth before he could be swallowed. The momentum, however, carried him away from what little of the deck remained. He had no time to focus on that, the bucking beast tying to eat him a more pressing concern. "Your Highness," a pair of voices called, the only remaining soldiers appearing at Fukaboshi's sides. The older one, Dave, slashed a gash into the sea king's snout, crimson blood oozing from the wound. The creature roared in pain, freeing the trident stuck in its mouth. Shine took that time to pull the prince away, the trio beating a hasty retreat while the sea king was discombobulated. "Prince Fukaboshi," Dave muttered, trying to keep his voice low. "What was that? What has happened to Princess Shirahoshi?" "Supposedly, it is an ancient power," the blue net answered, an almost detached horror welling up inside him as the pair of sea kings began devouring the old ship. His grip on his trident tightened and loosened repeatedly, as if he could not decide which he preferred if he noticed at all. Deccan called it Poseidon, the ability to call on and control sea kings. He said the first Vander Deccan came to the island looking for it, so it must have last manifested during the Void Century. That's ridiculous, Shine said, his eyes flinting from the prince's face to the evidence beyond and back. What do we do now? If that is true, the princess has gone mad. What if she turns her power on the island? Or if the strain becomes too much and the Sea Kings turn on her? I don't know, Fukaboshi admitted. He flinched, his hand reaching for his newest wound without thought. Your Highness, you're injured, Dave gasped. He reached forward as if to help but pulled back before touching the royal. For lack of anything else to do, his hands wound around each other. We must get you back to the Ryugu Palace. You're at risk here and you need to rest. I will go nowhere until my sister is safe, Fukaboshi hissed through the pain. Besides, Deccan got one of my lungs with that surprise attack. I cannot stop using my gills unless I want to asphyxiate. We must get word to the palace, Shine insisted, Dave already pulling a deep-sea transponder snail from his armor. His Majesty must know the situation. They can send a medic at least. Fine, the prince grunted after a moment, be quick about it. Dave nodded, already halfway through the number. The snail only rung once.
Hello. The voice of the Minister of the Right answered. Report.
Minister, we have grave news. Fukaboshi ignored his soldiers as they informed the palace of what had transpired over the last half hour. Instead, he focused on the questions Shine had asked, finding he did not immediately have answers. What do we do now? What if Shirahoshi turns her powers on the island? What if the strain becomes too much for her? These questions cycled through his mind on repeat, each conjuring a simulation and outcome worse than the last. Images of sea kings laying waste to Fishman Island chased pictures of them turning their fangs on his sister, all of them filled with death and gore on a scale the likes of which had never been seen by his people before. His eyes turned to the red and pink speck in the distance that was the mermaid princess, the girl directing her monsters like the conductor of a violent underwater orchestra. His sharpened teeth chewed at the inside of his cheek, the taste of copper flooding his tongue, but he could not stop. If I could save only one, would I pick the island or Shirahoshi? The thought came unbidden, a wave of panic flowing through his veins. Not because of the answer that came so quickly, but because of how quickly it did. That answer formed into answers for some of the other what-ifs that had been asked. Hardening his heart, Fukaboshi steeled his resolve. Shine, he said, the sound of his name startling the young soldier from where he had been listening to the call. What did the palace have to say? They're sending Hoi and Megalo as we speak, Shine responded. Them and another half-dozen soldiers and a medic ready for action. It's the most they could do while keeping a force at the palace in case Hody Jones has another force ready to attack. And what of Hody? He and Straw Hat are currently duking it out in the Goncourt Plaza, sire. The rest of the Straw Hat pirates and Princes Ryuboshi and Manboshi are contending with the rest of the new Fishman pirates there as well, as far as we can tell.
Did father know about Tossesses? Yes, Shine answered slowly, his eyes anywhere except on the royal as if worried he'd need an escape. The prince, however, did not respond save for a narrowing of his eyes. He laments that Poseidon has awoken so completely and in such desperate times. He, the Minister of the Right, and the General are currently debating how best to react in the most probable scenarios, but trust you can handle it. I see. Fukaboshi turned his eyes back to the distant form of his sister, sea kings now pouring from the abyss to surround her in a veritable whirlpool of colorful bodies. He did not voice his notice of the doubt. If they trusted he could handle it, they would not be worried about alternate plans. What did he have to say about such matters?
The minister wishes to evacuate the people to the Noah. The general agreed, citing that we could sick the princess and her sea kings on the new Fishman pirates with the populace out of the way.
Preposterous. That's what His Majesty said, Shine nodded. He does not wish to involve Princess Shirahoshi in the battle any more than she has already, but at the same time admits that we cannot leave her to sort out later. We know precious little about the powers she possesses or what dangers they pose to her. Losing the princess would be as major a blow to the people as the loss of the queen was.
Fukaboshi flinched at the memory, his late mother's beaming smile sending another stab of pain through his heart even as he tried to swallow a sudden lump in his throat. What would she do at a time like this? Again, the answer came far too quickly for the prince's liking.
He knew that there was no right answer here, that the choice Queen Otahime would have made would have torn her apart. Not for the first time, Fukaboshi cursed his heritage and position that required such duties to his people. How had his mother accepted the role of queen and all its obligations over the life she'd had before? The life of a normal citizen would be so much calmer than being a prince, much less the heir apparent or the queen.
When can we expect our reinforcements? He asked, shoving these thoughts to the back of his mind. The worst would not come to pass, he told himself. He would not allow them to. Within 10 minutes, my prince. Hoi and Megalo left at top speed prepared for orders upon arrival. Good. The prince nodded, turning now to look Shine in the eye for only a moment before they darted back to his raging sister in the distance. Pray for my sister's safety, because upon their arrival, we shall gamble for both her fate and mine." Luffy and Hody rivaled Zoro and Hyuzu as they crashed across the battlefield. Plumes of dust marked every missed attack and every crater indicated another blow one of the captains had taken. They'd thrown each other around, knocking fishmen over like bowling pins by the dozens without regard to their well-being. Even now Luffy nearly hovered in the air, his rubber arms raining a gum-gum gatling down on the immobile Hody, said Fishman laughing through the experience.
Straw Hat has grown so strong, Hachi commented, Koby cutting his bindings loose while trying to ignore the blood that colored the front of his clothing. The octopus fishman rubbed his wrists, trying to ease complete circulation back into them for the first time in the weeks he'd been held captive. NYU. I just hope he's strong enough to beat Hody. Something happened to him that's made him more terrifying than he was before.
Captain Luffy can pull it off, Koby insisted, his crewmates who had fought the other officers gathering around him. He always has before. He is the man who will be the king of the pirates, after all. There's no need to worry, Grace agreed. He was determined enough when it was just us with him. Now that Luffy's got a kid, there's no way anything short of decapitation can keep him down. Even then, I bet he'd find a way back, he's too stupid to die. Oh, good for him, Hachi nodded, his eyes widening as he comprehended the words. NYU, what? A kid? When?
I think that's something for Nami to tell you herself, Koby said. He looked up, his eyes widening and his jaw hanging open as Mary's shaking form joined their little group.
Holy shit, Amy cursed, the color draining from her face. No wonder my fight was so boring. You took all the action, Mary. Sorry, the Klabouterman stuttered with a weak smile. Her outfit was covered in red and, given the spiritual nature of Klabouterman essence that they had instead of blood and the post-battle context clues, it was clear the blood was not hers. Oh, good, we got Hachi. Let me get that for you, Grace offered, stepping over to the white-haired girl. The chem woman rubbed her hands together, her palms secreting a substance that foamed and bubbled like soap. When she was satisfied with the amount, Grace ran her hands over Mary's clothing, the blood seeming to wash out cleanly wherever she did. Mary stepped away from the red pile of foam and bubbles as Grace finished, a watery smile stronger than her last one present.
Thanks, Grace. I think this shirt's ruined anyway what with the hole in the gut, but I can at least keep the suspenders and pants now. She shifted, a small squelch coming from her shoes, the sound highlighted by the way she flinched. She reached down, pulling a broken, red-covered tooth from within. Oh, I don't like that.
Do you want to talk about it? Koby asked as Grace repeated the cleaning process for his own shirt. He received only a shake of the head from the horned girl.
I think I'll talk to Chopper about it when we're done here, but I think I've filled my quota of violent self-care for the month. She chuckled, but there was no humor in her laugh.
Look out, Koby yelled, he and Amy grabbing their companions and leaping back. Luffy crashed where they'd been, his body cratering the earth. The captain shook his head, jumping to his feet a moment later with only dust on his clothes as any sign that he'd just hit the earth as hard as he did.
Don't think I'm done yet, Hog. Luffy roared, renewing his second gear before vanishing in a blur of steam. In his place appeared Zoro and Hyuzu, their blades locked in a stalemate as they glared at each other. They pushed apart, both only taking a second to prepare for their next bout.
Blue Ring Waltz. Streaming wolf swords. Similar to the name Hyuzu had yelled. Their actions almost resembled a choreographed dance, each of the merman's blades missing Zoro so closely that a few managed to even catch his clothing. Zoro retaliated with a low spin, Shisui and Wado cutting another pair of shallow gashes along Hyuzu's shoulder to join the other dozen that crisscrossed his body. Both panted, their eyes never breaking contact. The viewers held their breath, waiting for what was to come next. Slowly, one of Hyuzu's tentacles gave way beneath him, the man flinching as he tried to catch himself. It was to no avail as another two lost their grip on the earth, the merman tilting to the right before falling like a tree. He coughed blood upon impact, a hiss of pain escaping his mouth. What now? Zoro questioned through his labored breathing.
I could take another energy steroid, Hyuzu admitted, the blood pooling under him denoting how some of the scratches were deeper than Koby had thought previously, but I won't. I know the risks and already needed some to match your ability despite being older and having more swords. You are simply better than me, pirate hunter. He grunted, hurling his named blades at the human with the last of his arm's strength before rolling over onto his back to stare at the faux sun in the sky. Hoshokusha and Imono clattered to the ground at Zoro's feet, but Hyuzu could not bear to watch. He grit his teeth. The light was too much, too bright. Slowly, one shaky arm rose to cover his eyes, hiding the moisture welling there.
You have fought like a real swordsman, Zoro commented, doubting that the mercenary had the energy or inclination to attack him now. You put your all against end the line, and I greatly respect you for that. It wasn't enough, Hyuzu spat. I see how far my greed made me fall and no amount of drugs can lift me back to where I was. No amount of booze will help me forget what I've become. So please, end my misery and shame, pirate hunter. Let me die with a blade inside me like a true swordsman. I won't. Zoro shook his head, sheathing his swords. Hyuzu closed his eyes, his muscles tightening only to loosen again as his injuries sent reminders through him. So this is my punishment, a life of shame and ridicule after such a hard defeat? I have given up my swords, and there is no greater shame than to live on afterward. I am not fit to be a swordsman. And if I'm not a swordsman, then I am nothing. I will take your swords because that was the bet, the human began, scooping the matched blades from the ground, but your story will not end today. I will become the world's greatest swordsman, defeating even Mihawk. Once I do, I will return to see how strong you have gotten, Hyuzu of the 8 sword style. When I do, I expect you to give me a run for my money like nobody else. Hyuzu froze, the challenge taking a moment to sink in. He turned his head slowly, his eyes meeting Zoro's to search for any sign of deceit. There was none, only a set jaw and an unwavering gaze. You should join the army, Coby suggested, his voice surprising both fighters. They turned to him, the Rosset stepping toward them. I heard you were fighting because the new fishmen were paying you. That means you don't really buy into Hodi's philosophical bull. We can speak to King Neptune on your behalf, get you a reduced sentence. It will give you a chance to make up for everything you've done and give you a chance to get stronger. And if money is still important to you, who better to pay you than the kingdom? I mean, isn't it useless if there's nothing to buy? The merman snorted, a guffaw forcing its way past his lips as it morphed into a desperate laugh. He settled, his eyes once more landing on the light of the sunlight tree eve far above. His hand came to rest on his blood-stained shirt, the words of a long-lost idealist preaching in the square coming to his mind. You know, maybe you humans aren't too bad after all. Another bolt of condensed lightning shot from Jin's fingertip, the finger pistol shape now more literal than Jin could have believed possible before getting his fruit. Sunny had gone silent a few minutes ago, leaving Jin to lightning jump from point to point in her defense as weaklings swarmed in from all sides.
The Electric Eel brothers, second and first, sat on the deck's grass, their will to follow Hody lost like their battle against Jin, so they now acted as a surprise trap if someone managed to make it there. The younger princes and Kaku had taken up positions in a triangle on the ground, defending Sunny from there. Even so, Sunny was a big ship. Many pirates who slid through the gaps in their defense having to fall by Jin's hand. Not that they could have damaged her atom wood hull, but was the principle of the thing. What are ya doing, Frankie? The lightning man muttered to himself. Rum, you got any idea? I do not need my imagination, considering I possess our body's mantra of the mind. Then why don't you tell me what's going on? Oh, but Jin-kun, that would ruin the surprise, Kukuku. I hate you. A low groan reached Jin's ears, the man flashing from the port side railing to the top of the crow's nest. A fishman who must be part giant, or at least be some type of sea creature with a massive natural form, was lumbering toward the Thousand Sunny. He stood somewhere near 15 meters by Jin's estimate with curly, orange hair spilling to his knees in 8 thick parts from a jelly-like dome tinted a horrible yellow-red. A pair of beady eyes stared at the ship, each of the fishmen's steps bringing it closer to her while dragging along a massive club. He's awake, one of the pirates below yelled, his voice pitched with terror. Gel's awake, run for it. The noise seemed to aggravate the Titan, his free hand darting out to grab an unfortunate pirate who was just too slow. The man struggled for all he was worth but was unable to make any headway before coming into contact with Gel's hair. He screamed, crying for anyone to help him as the hair moved to suck him in deeper. At the halfway point he went silent, Jin only then realizing it was not a mane of hair, but strand after strand of thin tentacles layered over each other. The whole thing shifted slowly, swallowing the limp pirate until he disappeared forever. Uneasy, Jin aimed his finger pistol and let loose another lightning bullet, but the attack didn't seem to faze the creature as he continued his heavy-footed walk. Oh, that ain't good, Jin sighed. Rum, y'all got anything fair me? I am afraid you are on your own, my dear country bumpkin. Now ain't time fair pissin' me off, Rum. Currently, that is not my goal, Rum responded earnestly. That being, Gel they called him. There is no thought in him. My mantra can feel his desire to feed and that is all. He is no more than a walking, breathing weapon, barely sentient in his own right. Shit. Indeed. By my estimate, I should guess he will arrive within 4 minutes. You should advise your companions not to engage him in combat. Hissing under his breath, Jin jumped forward and turned, hooking his fingers on the rim of the crow's nest roof. Said fingers acted as a fulcrum, the monk swinging inside through the revolving windows. Most of the crow's nest was taken up by Zoro's considerable collection of training weights and equipment, but it also boasted one of the many microphones connected to Sunny's comm system. Wasting no time, Jin flashed to the metal box on the wall and pressed the button with a gear symbol. Frankie, whatever you and Sunny are up to down there, y'all better get it done ASAP. We got a massive thing coming in off starboard side and I'm thinking it's a kind o' jellyfish. Other new fishmen are scared of him and he ate one of them. Jin clenched his teeth, his eyes turning to the window to track Gel's progress toward their ship. Frankie,
Answer me, damn it. Ow! Frankie yelled through the speakers, his voice somewhat garbled by static. That's some bad news, devil bro. Luckily, it looks like Sunny's super plan is gonna work. We just needed some time to make some alterations to a few things. You said he's off to starboard? That's right. Super, hang tight and watch the magic happen. Excitement and fear bubbled in Jin's gut, a sentiment mirrored by his violent alter ego as the lightning man returned to his spot perched on the roof. Sunny shook as her soldier dock system doors rose. The gate only opened halfway when something shot out of her with the speed of a missile. The sudden speed threw Jin for a mental loop, the man needing to blink a couple times before he could find the missile again and track it. The first thing he noticed was Frankie's distinctive shoulders, their red bulk allowing him to not lose sight of him. Once he knew Frankie was on top of whatever was moving at such speeds, it made things easier. The cyborg laughed as his mechanical tricycle, not that he would ever call it such, banked a sharp turn. Frankie's arm shot out, clotheslining a trio of fishmen, before he stomped on the gas and barreled toward the Titan Jin had warned him about. It turned toward the roar of the engine, raising its club for a swing. Frankie grinned, swerving the strike that left a crater in the earth. The giant fishman roared, turning as quickly as it could to give chase. The cyborg's black rhino 4 was just too quick, however, the human's taunts keeping the lion's main jellyfish fishman in pursuit. Maker, Sunny's voice called from the rhino figurehead on the front of the motorcycle, Brasio ahead. You know what to do, Sunny, and Frankie jumped off the trike. Both the fishman and Jin balked at the action, Frankie tucking and rolling away his momentum as his vehicle shot toward the tank with a burst of speed. Jill Yelanky as he got to his feet and turned, the magnetic spheres on his shoulders aligning and opening to show a pair of rockets within. Frankie rocket launcher. The projectiles left trails of smoke as they flew, exploding on contact with the jellyfish fishman. Jell staggered but remained standing, his mane of tentacles waved, almost angrily, as he lowered his stance and charged. Frankie, get out of there, Jin warned, raising his voice in a meager attempt to be heard. What are you doing? Run. No need to run, devil bro. The Water 7 native laughed, staring down the 15-foot-tall fishman without a flinch. This is gonna be super. Sunny left hook. Jin was not alone in his goggling. Fishmen both in the battle and watching from the crowd above could not believe their eyes as a robot rivaling Jell in height socked said fishman in the jaw. He stumbled backward, his free hand coming up to rub the forming bruise. Frankie laughed, popping a microphone out from somewhere within his torso. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, fish folk and merfolk of all ages. The cyborg boomed, his voice projecting from speakers set within the Thousand Sunny. If you don't know me, I'm Cyborg Frankie, super shipwright of the Straw Hat Pirates, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's unveiling. In this corner, representing the new Fishman Pirates, some big guy they call Jell. But over here is today's real treat. He gestured to the robot that was bouncing on its heels, punching the air like a boxer warming up in the rain. This super specimen is two things in one. Combining the Brasio Tank 5 and the Black Rhino 4 gives you the Iron Pirate, General Frankie. But that's not all folks, because piloting this miracle of machine work, if I do say so myself, is the one, the only, the super Clabouterman of the Thousand Sunny. What? The crowd yelled, emotions of every sort mixing into a cacophony of incredulous noise. The cylindrical body of the machine opened, revealing the chair and mechanisms that would control the General Frankie, but with no person to be seen. Even so, the machine tilted itself to the right, slamming its forearms together in Frankie's classic pose. Super, Sunny's voice yelled. The face, crafted to look like Frankie but with a horn rather than the pompadour he'd had 2 years ago, turned to the shipwright cum announcer. Like that, Maker? Exactly like that, Sunny, Frankie answered, striking the same pose himself. Oh Goda, there's two of I am. Jin himself could not believe what he was seeing, their shipwright acting like an announcer for the fun of it in the midst of a battle. The back half of a battle, sure, but still. How amusing, Rum mused within Jin's mind. I did not expect such showmanship from the metalhead, but your shock, pun unintended, was well worth the short wait. Cuckoo. Jell blinked several times, staring at the pair. Considering Rum's earlier comments about his mental state, Jin doubted he had enough wherewithal to understand how machines worked on a regular basis, much less one being piloted by the partial spirit of a pirate ship. Apparently shaking the unnecessary confusion away, Jell pushed himself back to his feet and charged. The problem with Jell's new focus, however, showed that his earlier speed had not been all there was to him, his movement now belying his size. A yell of exertion accompanied the heavy bang of his club meeting the side of the General Frankie's hollow hide. Sunny's proxy body stumbled, the pain scratched. That woulda hurt, Sunny gasped, jumping away from Jell's next swing. You can do it, Sunny, Frankie cheered, showing off his own boxing stance. He punched the air. Give him the old 1-2-1. Yes, Maker. Jin imagined the Clabouterman squinting, in lieu of the General Frankie having a solid, unmailable face. As she stepped forward, mimicking the cyborg's stance. The machine's arms shot forward 3 times in quick succession, the first 2 blows landing meaty hits to Gel's torso while the last socked him in the jaw. Gel spun with the momentum, his hair like tentacles swinging with the centripetal force. Sunny brought up her borrowed arms on reflex, the tentacles wrapping around the forearm. Ha! One particularly loud fishman pirate laughed from the sideline. Sunny jerked, trying to pull away from the dangerous strings. They stuck to her, thousands of minuscule nematocysts locked into inconsistencies in the metal. You're done now. Gel's venom can paralyze people in seconds. Even just a touch is said cause hours of agony, now that he's got you. Really? Sunny asked, grabbing the tendrils with her hands and ripping them apart with brute strength. Gel screamed in pain as each snap sent a shock through his nerves. Can't feel it. But how? Don't got a body, Sunny shrugged, rolling the shoulders she was in control of. Bits of the ruined tentacles stuck to her hands. Well, got this one but no nerves. Not used to arms or legs. Feels funny. Gel yelled, punching the robot in the face. Sunny stumbled backward, arms flailing, before losing her balance. The General Frankie hit the earth with a mighty clang, the fishman who'd caused it barking out a laugh. Gel smirked and stomped toward his fallen foe. Maker, Sunny cried, arms flailing. What'd I do? You're okay, Sunny, Frankie insisted. Put the wrists together like this and super push. Sunny did as bid, the wrists of the General Frankie locking together as holes in the palms opened. She gasped, the forearms bulging as gas filled them to bursting. Gel blinked, only a second passing before a near missile of air slammed into his gut, blowing him off his feet. If Sunny had eyes, they would have blinked. Coup de burst, she muttered as she recognized the technique. Something seemed to click, a physical light clicking on within the General Frankie's eyes. Diagnostics. Analyzing systems, checking mechanics and integrity. Damage to General Frankie at superficial levels. All processes functional. Cola levels at 90%. All systems go. Finally, Frankie grinned, watching as Sunny maneuvered her temporary body into a much more comfortable stance. She shot forward with a burst of carbonation through the vents on her back, landing a hard blow to Gel's side. The cyborg felt a tear roll down his face at her yell of, Sunny boxing. They grow up so fast. Not you, too, Jin sighed, rubbing his forehead as if the action would lighten his headache or silence Rum's laughter. Frankie's happy blubbering broadcasting through the speakers didn't help matters. Goddammit, everyone's trying to become parents round here. With Sunny's newfound confidence, Gel stood no chance in a straight-up brawl. His only weapons had been his size and debilitating toxin. But the General Frankie neutralized both advantages and her Robin-given intellect far outstripped his innate instincts. She finished a strong combo, finished with a double palm strike to the lion's main jellyfish fishman's chest. He coughed blood as the force knocked him flat. You see that, Maker? Sunny asked, hands on her hips as the General Frankie turned to the human. Unable to speak through the lump in his throat, Frankie shot her a thumbs up. Gel, here, one brave fishman yelled, running as close to the groaning titan as he was willing to before throwing something too small for the humans to see. Gel swallowed instinctively, a single heartbeat echoing in the area. His body bulked, his small eyes losing their pupils to the sudden red glow. He rose, having gained another 2 feet. His circular mouth, the inside circumference lined with needle-like teeth, sneered. Look out, Sunny, Frankie warned, the Klabouterman turning toward her foe only to get a punch to the middle of the body for her trouble. Metal groaned under the force. Sunny unable to respond before Gel grabbed either side of the General Frankie and tossed it. The machine flailed before coming to an unceremonious landing and skidding over the cobbles. External damage at 1%, Sunny muttered absently, her soul connected to the machine's internal systems. Vent sal damage but remain operational. Opponent's power has increased by 1,600%. Proceed with increased caution. Get out of there, Sunny, Frankie warned. Devil bro and I can take him. It's super too dangerous now. No, Maker. I'll get him, Sunny. But the Klabouterman didn't listen, rolling the General Frankie to its feet and charging forward. Gel lowered his stance, almost like that of a football player preparing for a play. Sunny, however, had no intention of following along without making it difficult. She planted her borrowed legs, swinging one arm up in a backhand from below, its speed enhanced with a bust of carbonation. The metal knuckles met the jelly-like flesh on the underside of Gel's jaw. His head snapped backward, opening his body to Sunny's full body tackle. The iron pirate lifted Gel much like he'd done to her moments ago before she swung down, plowing him into the earth. Graw! Gel cried through a bloody cough, the lion's mane jellyfish clawing at the mech with his hands and tentacles in an attempt to find some purchase. Sunny bat his hands away and slugged him twice. Gel groaned, letting out a sound similar to a sigh. Considering Sunny did not possess lungs and, therefore, did not breathe, the iron pirate stood and turned away. She was several steps away when Gel stirred, the fishman climbing to his feet for a third round. Subject will require greater persuasion, Sunny observed. Maker? Use the Franken. The cyborg yelled. Steal some super sword stuff from Moss Bro or Dino Bro and take that guy out of the fight. Right, Sunny turned, the General Frankie drawing the massive sword from its back. The Marauder sword flashed through the air, trading hands and coming to rest by the mech's right hip. Sunny's stance lowered as Gel approached. Focus, Sunny. Like Mary said, focus on their training. Gel built up his speed, the Titan now sprinting toward the machine, his eyes flashed. Die. One sword style. Death Lion Song. The Iron Pirate moved faster than it was ever meant to, pivoting on its heel as Gel raced past. The Franken lashed out, severing his mane at the base, and finished the rotation. Gel turned slowly, his beady eyes empty and uncomprehending as too many nerve stimulations cried out in pain and ceased to connect. One hand rose, touching the stumps where his tentacles had been and returning to his V-zone covered in red. Unable to deal, he fell to his knees, shock and blood loss stealing his consciousness. I did it? Sunny asked. She threw her barrowed hands into the air. I did it. That's a wrap, folks, Frankie announced into his microphone through his proud blubbering. Sunny takes down Gel in no time flat. It's not looking good for the new fishmen in this battle, what a match. Rahaha, the spirit laughed, posturing under the praise. I'm too strong, And the head of the General Frankie crumpled, crushed metals and cracked splinters flying through the air. The arms dropped, the mech collapsing onto its back like a dropped puppet. There, standing upon the now headless shoulders, stood Hody Jones, the machine's drill clamped in his mouth. He squeezed, his teeth crushing the drill with sheer pressure. Sunny, Jin and Frankie cried, both men running toward the scene. Jin was faster, his powers propelling him at the fishman. You blue bastard, the lightning man yelled, materializing before the rival pirate with a peal of thunder, his tonfa mid-swing. Astrape's arc. Again, the sound of lightning crashed through the surroundings as charged tonfa met flesh, but the only sign of displeasure Hody showed was a slight flinch in his cheek even as sparks flew off him. His hands held the gold-covered weights he'd caught, the breaking of the sound barrier sending his gray hair aflutter. The electric devil, Hody observed with narrowed eyes, Jin's tonfa creaking in the fishman's grip. Rumor says you've got one of the strongest devil fruits in the world. I can't say I'm impressed. Where's Don Luffy? The logia snarled, another surge of electricity coursing through him and into the captain. Hody didn't react, the literal glow in his eyes brightening. In a ditch on the other side of the plaza. I don't believe that. Believe it, human. Your moron of a captain cannot hope to beat me, and neither can you, even with your logia powers. You're just human. Jin's eyes shaded, the two fighters locked in their stalemate. He took a breath, his shoulders relaxing even though his arms maintained their pressure. Rum, he muttered, a confused look crossing Hody's face. Tell me straight, is Don Luffy dead? No, the voice in his head answered. He has been injured but is already beginning to recover. Hody managed to take a bite out of his side. Let's make a deal. A deal? Hody questioned. I ain't talking to you. Jin shot back. Rum, y'all got till Don Luffy gets here. Put the fear of Olympus into this bastard, fair Sunny. Hody's eyes widened as the human's countenance shifted, a maniacal grin stretching over the man's face. Ah, Jin-kun, Jin's body chuckled, the voice smoother than before. You don't know what you've done, but I will accept this chance with open arms. What happened? Hody demanded. What are you? Ah, Hody Jones, Rum grinned. Where are my manners? You may call me Rum. Let us see if your artificial power can withstand the might of one who has killed a god. You? Hody laughed. Killed a god? Don't make me laugh. Jin, Rum, it matters not what you call yourself. You are still human, and no human can hope to beat a fishman like me. I am no human, Rum giggled, ripping the tonfa free from Hody's grip while sprouting lightning wings similar to the ones Jin had showed off on Sabaody. These wings were, however, both a different shape and altogether lacking the hockey Rum could not use. The wings under this alternate ego's control were leaner, each having 5 condensed bolts of lightning connected to one above, stray bolts dancing between them and carving burnt lines into the cobblestones below. I am the devil poor Jin-kun tries so hard to deny. Kukuku, die for me, Hody Jones. A pulse of force exploded from above the downed form of the General Frankie, Rum and Hody disappearing in a blur of speed. The blast of air forced Frankie to shield his face, his toes digging into the earth to keep himself from being thrown away in the moment. Sunny, the cyborg yelled as the wind disappeared, the man closing the rest of the distance between his position and his creation. He jumped, landing where Jin had stood, and hit a certain spot on the right side of the body. Something clicked, the door to the inside popping up for Frankie to pull open. The empty insides were bathed in flashing red lights, different system warnings all registering malfunctions and damages with the loss of the head. Frankie ignored all these, Such things could be repaired or replaced later, and zeroed in on a certain yellow and red flower-shaped piece of welded steel located on what would have been an innocuous bit of paneling. It was exposed to air. Half of the area it had been set into missing, but the flower itself had popped out of place. Frankie let go of a relieved sigh and he pulled the flower free. "You super scared the shit out of me, Sonny," the man said, falling back against the wall as he cradled the flower in his mechanical hands. The weight of the steel took a moment to fully register before unrestrained tears broke forth in an unrelenting torrent from his eyes. He hugged the flower. "Sonny. Oh, Sonny. I thought we'd lost you. I'm so glad you're saw AAAFE," he blubbered. The steel in his hands heated slightly in response, reassuring the cyborg that she had not met an early demise while away from her true body. The steel then cooled, becoming lukewarm as a falling tear. "Don't worry about that, Sonny," Frankie sniffed. "The Black Rhino 4 and the Brasio Tank 5 can be fixed up. You're more important than that. Hey. As Luffy would say, you're Nakama. Now let's get you back to your real body. I'm sure it's too cramped in there to get back into the battle," the flower warned again.